Hello and a very good morning. It's 7 a.m. and this is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how things are looking.
As the country shivers in freezing temperatures, the energy regulator raises the price cap on bills, despite falling wholesale energy prices.
President Zelensky says he will engage honestly with a peace plan that's been drafted by the US and Russia, but warns Moscow has no desire for peace.
The drug trade here behind a billion-dollar money laundering network funding Russia's war in Ukraine.
And also ahead, this morning, England taking on Australia in Perth. We're going to speak to the cricketing legend, Nasser Hussain. As the tourists are bowled out for 172 on the first day, as Mitchell Starc takes 7 wickets.
Hello, thanks for joining us this morning. Just in the last few minutes, the energy regulator Ofgem has announced a rise in the cap on energy prices. The cap will go up by 0.2%. Now, this affects how much you pay for your energy bills every month, and the change means that companies can keep bills stubbornly high.
Now, it's going to be disappointing news for many. Ofgem had been expected to cut the cap, but they haven't. The increase comes despite falling wholesale energy prices. So let's bring in our business and economics correspondent, Paul Kelso, for more on this. Paul, morning to you. So what is going on? Because we thought it was going to fall. It's actually gone up.
Yeah, we were expecting a small decline in the price cap. It has risen. It's risen by 0.2%. Ofgem, the regulator, uses this very broad measure of average use for an average home using both gas and electricity. And it amounts to about £3 over the course of a year, this increase. So not much in the scheme of things. The really interesting thing that's going on here is that price has gone up, albeit a small amount, and it's gone up despite the wholesale price driven mainly by gas. Of course, we'll remember how that pushed prices up other Ukraine. That's fallen 4% over the last 3 months of the measures, but bills have still gone up because we've been told for a long time, haven't we, that gas prices fall, our bills will fall. Well, the reason is some of the costs of shifting our energy network away from fossil fuels. There's one in particular in here. For the first time, consumers are now starting to pay for the construction of Sizewell C, big nuclear power station. It's about £1 a month, averages about £10 a year over the lifetime of building this. There's also some policy costs, as they're known here. The Warm Homes Discount, which is a payment for the least affluent households. It's been increased to cover more households this year. That's adding a small amount to bills. But the overall trend here is that despite wholesale prices falling, some of the costs of the energy transition are now keeping bills high. It's something I've been having a look at, and I put a report together I think we can see now.
Let's take a look.
If the government has a vision of the ideal home, this is probably it.
A heat pump can keep an old house warm then?
Oh yes, no problem about that. It's only a question of how much heat you need.
Maddie and Richard have optimised their suburban Surrey house for low-carbon heat and power.
The main unit's out here, so it's taking heat out of the air and then taking the warmth in the water circuit back into the radiators.
So you've got solar as well.
Yes.
It's taken years of planning, upfront investment and subsidy, but they are saving money.
You've got double glazing.
Yes, and we've got a battery.
OK, so it sounds like you've got all the equipment. You've done everything you can. Can you put a number on total spend, solar power plus solar panels plus heat pump?
If we were doing it today,
yeah,
the heat pump would be about 13, the solar panels would be about 10, and the battery would be about 4. But we've done that over 20 years.
Has it saved you money?
It saves us a lot of money.
The story of this house is a microcosm of the energy transition. There may be dividends in future, but the upfront cost of the race for clean power is being paid today, leaving the UK with among the highest energy prices in the world. Built in a hurry in the 20s and 30s, connecting largely coal-fired power stations to cities, the grid expanded in the 50s as nuclear power came on stream. And in the 90s, the dash for gas started to displace coal, but connecting new solar and offshore wind requires a network of undersea cables and pylons at a cost of around £70 billion. Reducing reliance on gas-fired electricity is central to the plan, but while gas prices have fallen back, the cost of renewables and grid expansion is rising. The boss of one of Europe's biggest providers says cutting green levies is the only quick fix.
We have quite a lot of policy costs in our energy bills in the UK. If we remove those from energy bills and put them into general taxation, that will have a big dampening effect on energy prices, but fundamentally it is about gas.
Higher energy bills have helped shatter the political consensus.
Net zero was a Conservative policy. Why have you ditched it?
Net zero is now forcing people to make decisions which are making people poorer. And that's not what people signed up to. So when it comes to energy bills, we know that they're going up over the next 5 years to pay for green levies. When you look at jobs, we are losing jobs to other countries. Industry is going. And that not only is a bad thing for our country, but it also is a bad thing for climate change.
The government promised its clean power plans would cut bills by £300, but now says consumers will have to wait.
When are energy bills going to come down?
The truth is, we do have to build that infrastructure in order to remove the volatility of fossil fuels from people's bills. We obviously hope that that will happen as quickly as possible, but there's no shortcut to this, and there's no easy solution to building the clean power system that brings down bills. And our opponents talk about gas being an alternative, but of course we would have to build new gas at huge cost as well.
Chancellor Rachel Reeves has promised to cut energy costs in the budget to ease the short-term pain of delivering long-term gain.
So, Paul, really interesting stuff. And I guess the big question is, are bill payers going to get any respite come the budget?
It's certainly something the Chancellor says she wants to do. She's been explicit. She actually has been explicit about this one. She said, I will take action to bring down energy bills. It's not been a nod and a wink. It's clear. The question is how. I heard Michael Shanks, the Energy Minister, telling me that there is no shortcut to delivering the significantly lower bills that Labour promised. They promised to cut bills by £300 by moving to a lower carbon network, cutting emissions at the same time as bills. That doesn't look very compatible at the moment. So the area she might look at, we heard Michael Lewis, the Chief Executive of Uniper, there talk about it, removing the social costs and the policy costs from bills. So things like the Warm Homes discount, which is paid by energy bill payers. It's a payment to the least well-off households. There's a strong argument, many make, that should be in general taxation. So if you lift that small payment we all pay out of bills, you can start to bring some of the cost down. There's some of the old levies and subsidies, some levies for home insulation and the like, they might come out of bills. There's all sorts of costs that could be targeted. Of course, the question is, if you take them off our bills, you stick them onto the taxpayer bill, and that's what Rachel Reeves is wrestling with. So we wait and see. Also VAT potentially, but that of course benefits those who pay the most more. So we will expect to see something in the budget, but across the longer term, I think this question of how the government maintains its direction here, while bills, and it's likely they will stay elevated if they stay there.
And Paul, what's the business angle on all of this? What are the companies, the power companies saying? Is there more that they can do to bring bills down? I mean, if their wholesale prices have gone down, are they making money now again?
This is most of the power companies, particularly the ones that both, if you talk to Centrica, they both extract fuel and they generate power. They make money from oil and gas extraction. They don't make as much money from their power business, from their retail business, because they're regulated. Very interestingly, earlier this month, perhaps at the start of last month, three big energy companies were in a select committee in Parliament, which they said if wholesale prices were zero, bills would still be rising because of these additional costs. Now, people are not going to have much sympathy with the power companies who are making profits. These profits, on the whole, are regulated by Ofgem. That's part of what this process is around. If you talk beyond the power companies, talk to British business and industry, we have the highest industrial energy prices in the developed world, well, the second highest domestic prices, but the highest prices, and some action already. They are crying out for some cuts because the argument is that these elevated prices depress growth and are a drag on the economy.
Yeah, in the meantime, the government will argue we need to spend this money now because it'll bring down...
they have a very clear long-term vision. The question is if it can do both, cut emissions and cut bills. At the moment, the bills are where they were.
Paul, thanks very much indeed. And it is a real concern, especially when the temperature drops and, you were scraping ice off your car.
I was indeed, and the heating has been on as well. But every time you do that, you are concerned about how much the bill is going to be when it eventually comes through. And obviously for people on very fixed incomes as well, it's a greater concern that they will have to be making that really tough choice that we heard all about during this crisis of energy, of heating and eating. It's a real concern. As Paul mentions, there is likely to be some respite of sorts in the budget. We'll wait and see. Of course, that budget is coming next week, Wednesday.
Indeed. Now, Volodymyr Zelensky says he's ready for honest work with the US after receiving a draft peace plan from Donald Trump to end the war with Russia.
Yeah, the US and Russia produced a 28-point plan to end the Russian invasion, insisting it doesn't require major concessions from the Ukrainian side. But European leaders have responded, insisting that Europe and Ukraine must have a seat at any table for any negotiations.
Well, overnight, President Zelensky posted on his social media that he's ready to work on the US plan. This is what
I
outlined what is fundamentally important to us, and we agreed that the teams would work on these proposals to make them a reality. We will not make any rash statements and are committed to clear, honest work. Ukraine, the United States, and our friends and partners in Europe and around the world. These days there have been many conversations with European leaders and a lot of correspondence. I thank all of Ukraine's friends for their support. Today I spoke to Finnish President Stubb. We are coordinating our efforts. I am also in constant contact with other leaders, including the President of France. I expect to speak to President Trump in the coming days. We are aware that America's strength and support can bring peace closer, and we do not want to lose that.
That was Volodymyr Zelensky in his nightly address, which he posts on social media every single night of this 3-year war. Our Moscow correspondent, Ivor Bennett, has this.
The talk is of peace, but he was dressed for war. On a rare visit to his troops, Vladimir Putin had a message that Russia has no intention of backing down.
We have our own tasks, our own goals. The most important of these is the unconditional achievement of the goals of the special military operation and the fulfillment of the objectives set before us.
And it's clear Russia's on the offensive at the negotiating table too. In Kyiv, American officials presented Ukraine with a new peace proposal, drawn up after holding secret talks with Moscow.
Nice to see you. You're very welcome. We are thankful to President Trump. Best regards to him.
President Trump and our Vice President pass along their very best.
Warm words, but not good news for Kyiv. The proposals reportedly include the surrender of the Donbass, which Russian forces are yet to occupy the whole of, and limits on Ukraine's armed forces, both of which are major concessions for Kyiv. But the White House has defended the deal.
It's a good plan for both Russia and Ukraine, and we believe that it should be acceptable to both sides, and we're working very hard to get it done.
It's only a month since the Kremlin appeared to have fallen out with the White House. A second summit between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump was abruptly cancelled by the US president, remember, after Russia's refusal to make any concessions. And that was followed up with sanctions. But now it appears to be all change again. Moscow's apparently back in Washington's good books.
Reports of the secret talks have caused concerns in Europe and warnings that they must have a seat at the table.
Of course, for any plan to work, it needs Ukrainians and Europeans on board. So this is very clear.
There was some contact between Russia and Ukraine away from the battlefield. The two sides exchanged more bodies of dead soldiers. But when it comes to peace talks, Kyiv is being kept at arm's length. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Moscow.
Well, and at that final point from Ivor there about Kyiv being kept at arm's length does seem right. It seems as if this conversation has been had between Moscow and Washington. Steve Witkoff and Kirill Dmitriev on the Russian side have been talking about this for about a month to try and come up with this plan. President Zelensky, as I say, posts on social media every single night. He has done for the entirety of this war. Here's a little bit more of what he had to say, because his tone seems to have changed in terms of being able to perhaps accept some of this plan.
Я вдячний усім,
Ukraine needs peace, and Ukraine will do everything to ensure that no one in the world can say that we are undermining diplomacy. This is important.
I mean, look, Ukraine needs peace. Of course they do. I think he's very careful there to make sure that he doesn't say anything that seems as if he's not being grateful for the US support to try and end the war.
Well, that's right. I mean, as you say, very little in this plan that's of any interest to Kyiv. Lots of their red lines would be all trampled all over. Absolutely. But he doesn't want to upset America because there is a risk, of course, that they could withdraw more support for Ukraine, including kind of crucial military intelligence support. So they've got to tread carefully.
They certainly have. And President Zelensky, as you may well know, is in a weak position. There's a huge corruption scandal engulfing his administration at the moment. So perhaps he's feeling some of the pressure. We'll put some of that to Alexei Goncharenko, who's an opposition MP based in Ukraine. He's an MP for Odessa. We're speaking to him later on this hour and ask him all about that peace plan and, of course, the potential future for President Zelensky.
Now, police have cracked a billion-dollar money laundering network operating here in the UK involving the sale of drugs and weapons to fund the Russian war effort.
Yeah, it's been an enormous operation covering 28 cities and towns with money here converted into cryptocurrency to get around financial laws.
There's been a large quantity of cash found in the car. £60,000. 60,000.
So this is just one of over 128 arrests made, and you can hear just how much cash police are dealing with.
Yeah, it shows the arrest of an individual called Valery Popovich. He used cash to buy vehicles in the UK and sold them in Ukraine before converting the profits into crypto, making millions. All right, let's bring in our correspondent Emma Birchley for a bit more on this. And Emma, morning to you. So the National Crime Agency just sort of laying out how broad a network this has been.
I mean, it is absolutely vast. And actually, we're here talking about what's happening in the UK, but it goes beyond our borders. This is involving very many countries. And we're talking about huge sums of cash. So whether it's drug deals or the smuggling of illegal firearms, what you end up with is bags and bags of cash, and something needs to happen with that so that you can use it, and that's laundering. And it's turned into cryptocurrency. But what's really interesting here that the NCA, National Crime Agency, have been telling us about is the fact that the network involved bought an actual bank, controlling stake of an actual bank in Kyrgyzstan, to enable them to deal with this money. And actually, there are links then with Russia. So it's thought that maybe money being spent by someone on a town and city in the UK to buy some cocaine on a Friday night, then actually ends up being converted into cryptocurrency, ending up going through this bank and facilitating payments actually to the Russian war machine.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And they're kind of saying to people, just think very carefully. If you do think of buying drugs, bear in mind you might be actually funding the war in Russia. Yep. And also it's quite interesting as well, lots of arrests. They're clearly going for the top guys, but they're also going for those on the lower ranks of this whole network, aren't they? And they're putting up adverts in petrol stations.
Yeah, so these are the couriers, and they're absolutely crucial to this. And interestingly, the NCA making clear, don't think of these as vulnerable people at the bottom of the chain. Actually, they are quite sophisticated criminals.
Fully part of the network.
They are really part of the whole network. Collecting this money, and they might get only 0.5% as payments of their overall sum. When you're dealing with sums on this scale, though, we're talking about people being able to buy £1 million houses. So, yes, putting posters up in the loos, in the urinals, in a service station to try and warn people, actually, this is what you're getting into and you could face lengthy sentences. There's been a statement, or we've spoken to Sal Melki, who's the Deputy Director of Economic Crime at the National Crime Agency. This is what he had to say.
This laundering network is operating in at least 28 cities and towns in the UK, and there are many other networks like them. And they provide the lifeblood that makes crime pay. So most crime is conducted on UK streets for profit. And if you can't make criminal profit, then why bother committing the crime in the first place? And you need these individuals to take that criminal profit and make it appear legitimate. So you can either cash out, settle debts, or reinvest it in more crime.
You know, it seems as if the National Crime Agency are all over this. Emma, for now, appreciate the reporting. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
So we've learnt this morning that energy prices are going up again from January. Also this morning, questions over what lessons have been learned from the pandemic after Baroness Hallett's latest report on the government's handling of COVID, and now reports that the Prime Minister is set to approve China's super embassy. So lots to talk to the government about this morning. And I'm pleased to say that Science, Innovation and Technology Secretary Liz Kendall is here with me. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Lots to rattle through. Bear with me while we trip through these subjects. I want to start with China, though, because there are reports this morning that Keir Starmer is set to approve China's super embassy in London. Is that true? And if so, are you not concerned about the risks of espionage, given the sensitive location of this proposed embassy?
I can't comment on that news story today. Any decisions will be taken with through the proper process. But I would say this to you and to your listeners, that we are clear-eyed about our relationship with China. Our national security will always come first. That is absolutely non-negotiable. But where we can safely work with China, whether that's on the economy or areas like research, that's what we'll do, because we want to get the best outcome for the British public.
But a lot of people will remember those warnings just in the last few days and weeks from our security services of large-scale espionage across the UK, allegations of spying right at the heart of Westminster. People might be a bit surprised to hear that the Prime Minister is planning a trip to China.
Well, I don't know about the Prime Minister's diary plans for the new year, but what I do know is that he takes all of those issues extremely seriously. We will do everything possible to keep this country safe, and we are very clear-eyed about China's role there. But we also know that if there are areas we can work together on, whether that's in research or on economic growth, we need to do that, because we need to get those jobs and growth in this country.
Let me move on to energy prices, because we've learned just in the last few minutes that Ofgem has raised the price cap by 0.2%, not by much, but it was expected to go down. And it does mean that bills are 35% higher than they were before the war in Ukraine. Your government promised that bills would fall by £300. This is going in totally the wrong direction, isn't it? What's going wrong?
We are determined to deliver on that. Look, I know that people, especially as it's getting colder now, they're going to be really worried about their bills. They're going to be very worried indeed. And I want to assure people we are taking action. In the short term, this winter, an extra 250,000 people, that means now 6 million households in total, will have access to the Warm Homes discount. That's £150 off their bill, because we are spreading that to everybody on universal credit, low income, often very hard-working families. But in the long run, the only way we're going to get energy bills down, to get us off this roller coaster of the volatility of fossil fuels that we have seen, is to make sure we've got our own homegrown, clean energy, renewable energy. And I would say to you, last week, we announced a really groundbreaking deal for 3 small modular nuclear reactors in North Wales, with the ability to build more. We've already built more solar and wind farms.
Bills in the short term, isn't it? You're talking long term, but just to look at...
But both. I think people want short... People are bothered right now about getting through the winter, and that's why I've said we are taking further action. There's the budget to come next week, and the Chancellor's been very clear. She wants to see more action to bring the cost of living down. But we've also got to take those... Ultimately, we need to take those long-term decisions.
Yes, but those long-term decisions, which may well bring relief in the future, are causing pain now. The rise in... which is expected to go up in April as well, is not because of wholesale gas prices. It's actually because of the costs of investments in renewables and getting the system ready for that move to clean energy. That's what is pushing our bills up. Is this rush to net zero making us all poorer?
Well, the real issue why our bills are high that we need to get down is because we've had this reliance on fossil fuels and the volatility that we have directly seen in the market. We have to make the long-term decisions to invest in clean energy and homegrown renewable energy. But I would say to your listeners, if you're on universal credit, that increase in the number of people who are going to get access to the Warm Homes discount, £150 off your bill this year. And also, we are absolutely determined to do more. And I'm sure there will be more action on the cost of living in the budget.
But is the push too fast?
No, I think we've got to manage this carefully, because in the end, people want us to take long-term decisions, but right now they want to get those bills down. I'm proud of the action we've taken so far, but I'm sure there's more to do.
I want to get your reflections on Baroness Hallett's details yesterday, her COVID inquiry, the second part, and her conclusions. She's been scathing in her analysis of the government's handling of the COVID pandemic. Keir Starmer has paid tribute to those who lost their lives and is saying that lessons will be learned. But what lessons have been learned? Are we ready for another pandemic?
I do have to just start with the families who lost their loved ones, because they're now reliving all that pain and trauma once again. And I also think about my city, Leicester. You know, we were in lockdown the longest. So I'm determined to learn all the lessons. That is what the government is doing. We have recently run a big cross-government exercise on pandemic preparedness, so we can go through this all and make sure we've got all the right things in place. But what is interesting to me about this report is how important the report says science is, you know, scientific experts. And we really have to back our great scientists, back that expertise. You'll remember some people saying, you know, we didn't need to listen to experts, but we do. And I would also say, looking ahead, we know that incredible developments in AI will enable us to develop drugs and treatments and vaccines much more quickly. We need to invest in that. That's part of the announcement that I'm making today, a new AI growth zone in South Wales, but also how we help British scientists, British researchers have access to computing power to develop those new drugs, vaccines and treatments, but also how we back British businesses so that they can actually use those developments and put products into place and grow the economy. There's more we can do, I'm sure, and Keir, I know, is absolutely determined. We will do everything we can to learn the lessons from that dreadful period.
Liz Kendall, we appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed.
One to you, Secretary of State. Thank you for being with us. But after all the talk, the Ashes has begun. We're going to be in Australia very soon, speaking to former England captain Nasser Hussain. It hasn't gone well for the tourists to begin with. Hello there and welcome back to Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. Let's take you through some of our top stories. As the temperatures plunge, the energy price cap has risen despite falling wholesale energy costs. The regulator Ofgem says it's going to raise the cap by 0.2% from January, lifting the annual bill for a typical dual-fuel home to 28 pence a month.
President Zelensky says he's ready for constructive, honest and swift work with the US after receiving a draft peace plan from Donald Trump to end the war with Russia. According to reports, the proposal calls for Ukraine to cede areas of the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine.
A $1 billion money laundering network is operating in 28 towns and cities across the country. That's come from the National Crime Agency this morning. Officials say that Brits who buy drugs like cocaine could be indirectly impacting geopolitical events around the world.
Now, it's been a long morning for cricket lovers. Long morning if you got up at 2:30 this morning.
Like
Actually,
us.
like I did. But I didn't turn the cricket on straight away.
No, you didn't.
Why not?
No, well,
fool me.
He would have been very disappointed if you turned it on straight away.
As you can see. Hello there, Jackie. It might have been a slightly painful watch at 2:30, mightn't it?
Well, everyone talked before these Ashes tests. This is a great opportunity for England to win the Ashes. Australia are missing two key personnel in terms of Pat Cummins and Josh Hazlewood, two key bowlers. Cummins also their captain. You know, this is their time, this is their moment, and it's so incredibly difficult to go there and get anything. And this was the first morning, and normally they do like a run chase, but Ben Stokes thought this would be a good place to bat first, and everyone said it's a good place to bat first because it can break up later on in the match. So they did bat first, and it was just a very nervous start. And, you know, 172 all out is a very low total and not what they would have visualised on their, you know, brilliant first day of the Ashes, because it is a missed opportunity and it could have been so much better. But, you know, nerves.
Is that what it is, Jackie's nerves? It's not baseball. It's not that sort of aggressive play.
I think it's a massive, massive pitch as well. So you've got to adjust how you play, because a shot which might be a fall back home is a catch in this scenario. But before we talk more about it, we're going to go and try and go live to Perth very shortly to speak to Nasser saying, let's go through some of the bits that happened this morning. So
is that wise for those?
Well, we've got to look at it, I think. We've got to bear the pain.
Look away, Kamali.
Look away, Kamali. Opener Zach Crawley was the first to go, dismissed by Mitchell Starc, who, I forgot to say, had the most brilliant day of his career. Out for a duck at the end of the first over. Usman Khawaja with the catch at first slip. Joe Root, who has never got 100 in Australia, also went for a duck. He was caught at second slip by Marnus Labuschagne. England 39 for 3 at that point. And Captain Ben Stokes was the one that they really had their eye on. He got just 6 runs in his 12 deliveries before being bowled for Starc. So Mitchell Starc, 7 figures of 7 for 58, his best ever haul in a Test match, the best ever figures on day one of an Ashes. There was some resistance from Harry Brook. He was England's highest scorer with 52 before he went to, and debutant Brendan Doggett taking his first wicket. So It was Kamali.
Yeah.
We can talk now.
Go on, sorry. I almost interrupted you.
Go ahead. We have to sort of stick to a script on those bits. Very difficult morning. But I mean, in Australia's wildest dreams, that is just the perfect start to an Ashes series that everybody was saying, this is a chance for England. This is a chance for England to go to Australia and get something. It's difficult. I mean, they've not had a win in Perth. One win in 55 years. I mean, that's difficult. The pitches are really bouncy. They're dropped-in pitches on clay. They're very bouncy. They're very fast. And it's also a batting pitch as well, and it should have been way more than 172. So the bowlers have got to do something, and actually started really well.
Yeah.
Jofra Archer with a very quick wicket. And at one point, and for ages, actually, the first over. For ages, they were 0 for 1. They are 15 for 1 now at tea. So they just need more of that. But you can just see, Steve Smith like digging in, going, I'm not getting out.
But this is the thing, isn't it? Now the Australians will dig in, won't they? Because they will see the the chance to really get a start in this Test series and get ahead of it by just playing sensible cricket.
Yes, they will just dig in. And, I suppose one of the keys is, how do you make Steve Smith, who is one of the best batsmen in the world, if not the, how do you make him fail? And how do you make him fail quickly so they haven't got this big score on the board that's just so disheartening? And then you have to chase that down second time around, having kind of missed your chance first time around.
Some of the papers are reporting some upset caused by a former England spinner, Monty Panesar, to Steve Smith that he had to respond to.
There's been sledging already.
Which I thought was quite funny that Steve Smith even bothered to respond to that, but hasn't affected them in the field.
There's been loads. The fact that Steve Smith could be bothered to think of when he was on Celebrity Mastermind and he got this question wrong and that question wrong, and he's not going to listen to any criticism from somebody who, doesn't know where cities are, or I can't remember the question.
He thinks that Athens was in Germany. I think that was Monty's answer, which is not great. Look, you mentioned that Australia missing a couple of players. Talk to us about the importance of Pat Cummins not playing, because he is captain fantastic for that.
Yeah, he is captain. He is captain fantastic. I haven't seen him there, but I'm sure he probably is there somewhere, trying to rally them round. He's important. He's important as a bowler. He's important as a figure in that dressing room. Again, as well, Josh Hazlewood. So many, Ashes series under his belt. Incredible experience, and the fact that they've had to bring in 2 guys on debutant in an Ashes test. I mean, who does that unless you absolutely have to? But it doesn't seem to make any difference, and Australia seem to slot in players when other players are missing, and nobody seems to notice. And it does feel like the dream start that they wanted, that they had thought about, has already gone, and they're already chasing this first test, and it might not last 5 days the way it's going. But let's see what they can do. They've got
be optimistic, Jackie.
They've got very good bowlers, England, fast bowlers, good bowlers. They're back to fitness. Archer's back. Wood is back.
It's good to see him playing again.
It is really good to see him playing
and it's early days. And we should say that we're chatting here, hoping to get hold of Nasser Hussain.
I don't know where he's gone. He was there a minute ago. I don't know where he's gone.
But we'll keep chatting a little bit longer just to give him a chance to come on. You'll notice I've kept quite quiet because I'll be honest, I'm not particularly across the cricket, but I'm making notes.
Sacrilegious. I'm just checking the score around as we're talking. So Australia,
well,
24-4 at the moment.
They've just come back. Come back after tea.
But tell me about momentum, though, Jackie. I mean, how important is it to get off to a strong start, or do you just think, look, this is going to play out for weeks? We don't need to panic.
Well, I think there'll be a bit of that as well. This is sometimes how it goes. You don't get the best start on the first day, and you can't lose an Ashes series on the first day, but you could certainly lose the test on the first day if you don't do well enough and you miss your opportunity. And I really hope that's not the case for England, that they can do some damage with the ball in reply. But you can just see Australia now, like you said, digging in. We don't need to get loads of runs. We just need to not lose wickets. We just need to stay here. And then, tomorrow we can kick on again and try and get those big scores, which will, possibly put the game beyond England. But we're not there yet at all. I think momentum is important. I think the psychology of it is really important. And the fact that England have not won a series in Australia since the 2010-2011 series. I mean, wins in Australia are really, really rare. Even going back through time, they're pretty rare. So if you're given an opportunity, i.e. they've got a couple of key men down, you've got to pounce on that. And I think there might be a feeling, they could be kicking themselves tonight when they go back to the hotel thinking, we did have an opportunity there and we didn't take it. They had a couple of debutants and there were a couple of shots that we perhaps shouldn't have played, rash shots, bit silly. Harry Brook, he was very unlucky to get out. He ducked out of a shot and it hit his glove. It wasn't even that he was bowled or caught. He sort of did it to himself. It's a really tough morning.
It is.
Yeah.
The wonderful thing about cricket is the analysis and the way that we can think about how it's this early moments are going to impact the rest of the series. You say it's going to go on for a couple of weeks now through Christmas, isn't it? And England will perhaps go back. Well, let's see how the rest of the today goes, but perhaps go back after this and think.
Well, also the other thing was normally they start at the Gabba, which is a real fortress for Australia, and they've mixed it up by starting at this very new, beautiful, huge ground. in Perth. So that could also have been a psychological boost if you could have got the win there. And so many people have said it's important to get the win in this first one. Also, just to set that tone, to set you on a winning trajectory. You know there's going to be twists and turns in an Ashes series. It's never going to be all one-way traffic, you would hope. You know, but it could be.
Yeah. Oh, well, Jackie, thanks for filling us in. I've learnt an awful lot. And,
you have? You're a cricket convert now, yeah?
Filled us in a lot more. I don't know.
Would have done. It's a shame not to get in.
We'll send him a text and see if we can get hold of him.
Yeah, we'll find out what happened.
Thanks,
Lots
Jackie.
coming up,
See you
though.
later.
Jackie, thanks very much indeed. And now, a possible peace plan for Ukraine. We're going to be speaking with the Ukrainian MP, Alexei Goncharenko, next.
She's preparing the ground to raise taxes.
The budget, I've got to do the things that I think are right.
There are tax rises coming down.
You can't rule out further tax rises. It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
This knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything. It's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first. Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Hello there, and welcome back to Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. And we're going to reflect now on the findings of Baroness Heather Hallett as she submitted her conclusions to the second module of the COVID inquiry last night. And it was damning reading for all of us here in the UK that 23,000 lives could have been saved had the government at the time, the government, of course, led by Boris Johnson, had acted sooner.
Yeah, it was a scathing report, wasn't it? The message was pretty blunt. The UK's response was confused, slow and dangerously complacent. And we, of course, all remember those early days of the pandemic and the confusion and fear that so many of us felt. And this inquiry really does show the leaders of the day simply didn't meet the moment.
Well, our health correspondent, Ashish George, has been following all of this and sent us this report.
You must stay at home. Communities will become immune to it.
A protective ring around our care homes.
An eat out to help out discount.
A government battling an unprecedented health crisis, but it acted too slowly
and it failed to understand the danger posed.
I can summarise my findings of the response as too little, too late. All four governments failed to appreciate the scale of the threat or the urgency of response it demanded in the early part of 2020.
I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody.
The report says 23,000 lives in England alone could have been saved if the first lockdown had been imposed a week before it actually was, and that the Department of Health and Social Care misled the public by giving the impression that the UK was well prepared for a pandemic. For bereaved families, Baroness Hallett's findings are bittersweet. They feel absolved but pained by the failure of government. Naomi's mother, Christina, died alone in hospital in January 2021, and this is the last photo of her taken at Christmas.
I feel vindicated that she has set out the absolute failure of leadership at the very top of government. I hold Boris Johnson responsible for my mother's death in January 2021, and she sets out really clearly the terrible mistakes, the delays, the ignoring of scientific advice.
It was a mix of a lot of the wrong people in the wrong job, decades of accumulated power, no real scrutiny and insight.
The report singles out the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his key advisor at the time, Dominic Cummings, for creating a toxic and chaotic culture at the heart of government. And the government's Eat Out to Help Out scheme has been criticised for its role in the second wave of the virus. And Baroness Hallett found there was no lockdown exit strategy and no planning for a second wave. Giving evidence to the inquiry in 2023, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he was sorry for the pain and loss of COVID victims. Boris Johnson's chief advisor, Dominic Cummings, has led criticism of the inquiry, calling it a mix of cover-ups and rewriting history. But this scathing report will provide bereaved families some of the answers and culpability they've long asked for. While it will bring them no comfort, it may even cause them more distress, it will bring them closer to understanding why the UK's response to this unprecedented health crisis was so poor. Baroness Hallett has made 19 key recommendations, including clearer public health messaging and a greater scrutiny of emergency powers. Too late for the almost 227,000 people who died in the UK with COVID-19 on their death certificates, but making sure more lives can be saved when the next pandemic strikes. Ashish Joshi, Sky News in Westminster.
Well, it's been a long morning for cricket lovers, with the Ashes getting underway in Australia at 2:30 a.m. this morning. We're now into the final session of day one. Australia are 29 for 2 in reply to England's all-out for 172. Now let's chat with former England cricket captain Nasser Hussain, who's in Perth at the grounds for us. Nasser, we've got you finally. Persevered and you're there. Can you tell us about this morning? Because the importance of getting a good start was talked about, and this is not it. This is not what's happened for England this morning. Was it nerves? What was it?
It's not a good start. It was an eventful start, as it often is in Ashes series down under, with Crawley going in the first over. It was all action cricket in that first session, and just after lunch it was either boundaries or wickets. England will be hugely disappointed, having won the toss and batted. It has done a little bit. It has seamed around a little bit. Australia have already lost 2 wickets. And let's not judge a score until both sides have batted. But you feel 172 is below par. Australia outstanding. Mitchell Starc in particular outstanding. They were without Cummins and they were without Hazelwood. Starc had to step up, and figures where he got 7 for were just outstanding.
Yeah, he's had his best day ever, hasn't he? He's really enjoying life. How do England redress the balance? The bowlers, I guess, need to do the same to them. Jofra Archer's made a good start to doing that.
He has. England have bowled really well with the new ball, Atkinson and Archer. Archer in particular got the early wicket of Weatherald. He got the ball to swing back in to the Aussie left-handed opener. There's another cheer over my ear, so who knows? There's a massive Barmy Army crowd here. It is a great atmosphere at Perth. It is doing a bit. It is fantastic cricket. It really is very watchable cricket. England bowling well. It is just their batting, Jackie, and in particular their batting down the order. They knew what was coming. On these bigger grounds of Australia, the hook shot and the pull shot becomes dangerous because in England you can top edge it for 6. Here there are men out in the deep, and the Australian catching has always been excellent, and they caught well today. So England are going to have to rethink their plan when Australia go to plan B, short pitch bowling, how they handle that short pitch bowling.
Yeah, I mean, the pitch there does look massive. Why is it so different in the round, though, to win this series in Australia? You know, not one since 10-11, and they're just rare. Victories are just rare down the ages. Why?
It is. England haven't won any of their last 15 test matches in Australia, and they've only drawn 2 of those, so that's 13 losses. I think it's conditions. I think the conditions are so alien. The bounce, especially here in Perth, it's not the Wacker, which is just up the road. That was the bounciest pitch in world cricket, but it is bouncy here at the Perth Stadium. You're taking on a nation. You arrive, and as we've already seen in the build-up with the headlines, etc., the moment you step through and get through security at the airport, you're greeted with the headlines. When you're out and about, you're taking on a nation, the atmosphere, the crowd, and also, let's be honest, over the last however many years, they have been a world-class cricketing side. They may not be as good as they used to be, but as Mitchell Starc showed today, they still have some serious cricketers.
OK, Naz, thank you so much. You were right. Steve Smith out for 17. Courtbrook bowled cast. Australia 3 down, 30 for 3. Thanks, Naz. See you soon.
Thank you.
Now, as we've been reporting, peace in Ukraine may be a step closer after the US delivered a proposal to stop the fighting to Volodymyr Zelensky.
Yeah, well, let's speak now to Alexei Goncharenko, who is a opposition MP. He's part of the bloc of Petro Poroshenko, the former president. Alexei Goncharenko, thanks for being with us. I haven't got loads of time, but appreciate you joining us, of course, as always. Talk to us about your thoughts on this peace proposal, this 28-point plan. Is this going to be something that Ukraine is going to have to accept?
Yesterday, I received from my sources this plan, and I published it in my social media. And from what I see there, it's good news that we have some frame, finally, and it's a step ahead. Definitely some points of this plan are unacceptable for Ukraine, but that's diplomacy. Now we need to work on it and to change the points which are unacceptable for Ukraine. But in any way, we need peace here in Ukraine as soon as possible. That's the most important. You're just showing just yesterday awful tragedy when 25 people were killed just in one attack. And this night, again, attacks against Ukraine and energy infrastructure, which is destroyed by Russian barbaric attacks, and winter coming. So there is a lot of challenges, and we need peace. But that should be a just peace, and that should be a real peace, not a ceasefire, not just to give Russia possibility in several years to restart aggression and just to finish what they try to do to destroy Ukraine.
So you welcome the fact that there is a plan of sorts on the table, but what should Ukraine's reaction be? Because rejecting it out of hand could risk angering Donald Trump, and you need Donald Trump on side, don't you? How do you think this should be handled?
Absolutely, and I want to thank President Trump for all his efforts to establish peace here in Ukraine. And he really invests a lot of energy and efforts in this, and this is very important for us. And without him, without United States, this peace will not be achieved. So what should be made next? Now Ukraine should officially on the level of the president, but it can be done in a way, not public diplomacy, but in just very intense work. We need to give our propositions to the points which are unacceptable for us, and to give some counter propositions, and then we just need quickly to come through this and to make this plan closer to Ukrainian interests, and to find compromise. That's what we need to do now.
Alexei, we don't have loads of time. I've never heard you speak like this. I suppose it speaks to exactly where we find ourselves in this war and your nation needing to have an end to all of this. That corruption scandal that's roiling Zelensky's administration, is that part of the reasons to now we find ourselves with him perhaps weakened, ready to accept some of these terms?
Yeah, there is corruption scandal, and definitely political positions of President Trump or President Zelensky here in Ukraine are weakened. But I think it's different tracks. Peace is peace, diplomacy is diplomacy, and political things inside Ukraine are political things inside Ukraine. And one thing that I want to address to those who are listening and watching us now, when you are supporting Ukraine, you are not supporting, I don't know, some corrupted people, because unfortunately corrupted people can be found anywhere. And you're not supporting President Zelensky, because presidents come and go. You support multi-million nation which fights for independence, for human rights and rule of law, and for security of the whole Europe.
Alexei Goncharenko, thank you for your time, as always. Sorry to rush you. We've run out of time this hour, but really appreciate you joining us, as always. All right, stay with us here. Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. We'll be back with your main news, top of the next hour.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello and a very good morning. It's 8 o'clock and this is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how things are looking.
As the country shivers in freezing temperatures, the energy regulator raises the price cap on bills despite falling wholesale energy prices.
President Zelensky says he will engage honestly with a peace plan drafted by the US and Russia, but warns Moscow has no desire for peace.
The drug trade here behind a $1 billion money laundering network funding Russia's war in Ukraine.
We'll also ahead this morning with those energy bills now set to rise. How to save money will be on many people's minds. We'll be speaking to the psychotherapist Vicky Raynon, an expert on the psychology of money.
And in the sport, England fight back with early wickets after being bowled out for 172 on day one of the first Ashes test in Perth.
Hello, good morning. Thanks for joining us. We're going to begin with some disappointing news for many as the energy regulator Ofgem has announced an increase in energy prices. The price cap will go up by 0.2%, which means that bills will rise from January and a forecast to rise again in April.
Well, the rise is unexpected. It had predicted that Ofgem would cut the cap, and the increase comes despite falling wholesale energy prices.
Right, let's find out what all of this means by bringing in our business and economics correspondent Paul Kelso. Paul, morning to you. So what is happening with this price cap?
It's really interesting. So the price cap, the headline there, it has risen slightly, 0.2%. Not much. It amounts to, Ofgem uses a measure of typical usage for a typical home, family of four, and they say it'll be £1,758 averaged out over a year. Now, that's a £3 increase on the price cap. This applies from January, the price cap currently applies. So almost negligible, you might say. The really interesting thing, and that applies only to people who are on floating rates. If you've got a fixed rate, it won't change with your provider. What's really interesting is what's going on underneath the surface, which is wholesale prices, and that's driven primarily by gas. And we will recall that huge price spike, ruinous spike after the invasion of Ukraine, was all about gas prices. Now, they've fallen. Gas prices have fallen 4%, but the bills haven't followed them. And what is going on here is there's a couple of additional measures that account for some of that difference. We're now paying £1 a month. Everyone will pay for the construction of Sizewell C. That's going to take more than a decade, and we're paying it for that time, so we spread that out. There's also some social costs, as they're called, which is the government's policy one, warm homes discount, increasing payments of £150 to the least well-off households. So that goes on everybody's bills. But the principal thing, keeping bills high, despite that fall in wholesale prices, is the cost of building and maintaining renewable and low-carbon grids.
Which the government says ultimately will save us
absolutely.
money.
So the policy intended, as the promise was, to bring bills down by £300. A policy whose aim is to reduce that reliance on gas and cut bills is keeping bills higher. So this feels a little bit like a moment that the cost of net zero is starting to get real for people. Now, there are all sorts of reasons for this. It's a complex picture, the energy picture. I've been having a look at it. I think we can see that report now, which includes a reaction from the government.
If the government has a vision of the ideal home, this is probably it.
A heat pump can keep an old house warm then?
Oh yes, no problem about that. It's only a question of how much heat you need.
Maddie and Richard have optimised their suburban Surrey house for low-carbon heat and power.
The main unit's out here, so it's taking heat out of the air and then taking the warmth in the water circuit back into the radiators.
So you've got solar as well?
Yes.
It's taken years of planning, upfront investment and subsidy, but they are saving money.
You've got double glazing.
Yes, and we've got a battery.
OK, so it sounds like you've got all the equipment. You've done everything you can. Can you put a number on total spend, solar power plus solar panels plus heat pump?
If we were doing it today, the heat pump would be about 13, the solar panels would be about 10, and the battery would be about 4. But we've done that over 20 years.
Has it saved you money?
It saves us a lot of money.
The story of this house is a microcosm of the energy transition. There may be dividends in future, but the upfront cost of the race for clean power is being paid today, leaving the UK with among the highest energy prices in the world. Built in a hurry in the 20s and 30s, connecting largely coal-fired power stations to cities, the grid expanded in the 50s as nuclear power came on stream. And in the 90s, the dash for gas started to displace coal, but connecting new solar and offshore wind requires a network of undersea cables and pylons at a cost of around £70 billion. Reducing reliance on gas-fired electricity is central to the plan, but while gas prices have fallen back, the cost of renewables and grid expansion is rising. The boss of one of Europe's biggest providers says cutting green levies is the only quick fix.
We have quite a lot of policy costs in our energy bills in the UK. If we remove those from energy bills and put them into general taxation, that will have a big dampening effect on energy prices, but fundamentally it is about gas.
Higher energy bills have helped shatter the political consensus.
Net zero was a Conservative policy. Why have you ditched it?
Net zero is now forcing people to make decisions which are making people poorer, and that's not what people signed up to. So when it comes to energy bills, we know that they're going up over the next 5 years to pay for green levies. When you look at jobs, we are losing jobs to other countries, industry is going, and that not only is a bad thing for our country, but it also is a bad thing for climate change.
The government promised its clean power plans would cut bills by £300, but now says consumers will have to wait.
When are energy bills going to come down?
The truth is, we do have to build that infrastructure in order to remove the volatility of fossil fuels from people's bills. We obviously hope that that will happen as quickly as possible, but there's no shortcut to this, and there's no easy solution to building the clean power system that brings down bills. And our opponents talk about gas being an alternative, but of course we would have to build new gas at huge cost as well.
Chancellor Rachel Reeves has promised to cut energy costs in the budget to ease the short-term pain of delivering long-term gain.
So, Paul, really interesting that, and disappointing news this morning about their bills, people's bills. But can they expect any respite from the Chancellor this week? She's got the budget on Wednesday.
Yes, Rachel Reeves has been explicit. She said, I will take action to cut energy bills. Now, there are lots of options, lots of advice out there, as there always is. What seem to be the most obvious ones, she could cut VAT on bills, 5% currently levied out on energy bills. That would save about £60 to the average consumer. But it would disproportionately benefit those who pay more for their energy bills, so the better off generally, larger houses and the like. Some of the social costs we've talked about, including the Warm Homes discount, that is essentially the government policy to support people that's paid for by consumers, electricity consumers, could be shifted into general taxation. There are some quite old and very generous subsidies for early wind power. Those could be shifted perhaps. There's also a fund to insulate homes. Again, those could be shifted. But of course, anything she takes out of energy bills, she'll have to find from the general taxpayer. So ultimately, we'll all still be paying. But she is clearly said she's going to take some action. But this overwhelming trend, the long-term challenge here, and Labour's been absolutely explicit, we're committed to this and want to get a clean grid by 2030, that is going to continue to weigh on bills for years. And I spoke to Ofgem this morning, the regulator that's done this, about when we might see bills come down and whether this trade-off ultimately is worth it. I think we can hear from them now.
It's very hard to predict bills over the longer term. There's a lot of costs that go into the bill. What I think it will certainly do is it will stabilise our prices. It will make us less susceptible to volatile international prices. And so if there were to be big spikes in the future, like the ones we saw following the Ukraine war, then we will be much better protected as a country by the taxpayers and bill payers from those sort of shocks.
And Paul, I mean, can he say that we are going to be better protected as a country going forward? Because we see that this price cap can fluctuate, and of course we can't really account for what's happening around the world.
It should. If we are not reliant on importing large amounts of energy, then it stands to reason we will be better protected from those kind of shocks. A couple of things to say. At the moment, the cost of doing that is insulating us from the benefits of the price falling a little, a price worth paying, the government would say. It's also worth pointing out that before the Ukraine invasion, and that was a ruinously expensive, that cost the government spent £80 billion paying our energy bills, and that's part of the reason the public finances are in the state there. But before that, gas prices have been low and stable for a very long time. Now they are, one thing none of us have mentioned all morning is emissions and carbon emissions, and that is ultimately the point of this process. But for a long time, gas was very reliable and was responsible for cutting our emissions because we stopped using coal. Now, there's an enormous the transformation in our grid by 2050 is staggering, because we're going to build all these renewables, new nuclear power stations, while needing to maintain the gas network to fill the gaps when the wind doesn't
And even
blow.
those who agree with the ultimate aim don't necessarily agree with the pace of that change, and they're saying that's why our bills are staying high. Have they got
Absolutely. Until recently, I talked about the political consensus having been broken. We've heard from the Conservatives who now oppose it. But everyone was travelling in the same direction. Labour have chosen to accelerate this. 2030, a clean grid. It's an incredibly challenging target, probably going to be missed, frankly. But you set a goal, it helps drive people forward. You could slow the pace of that. We heard energy bosses recently in front of Parliament suggesting essentially that should be done, to just try and remove, that will help bring the cost of the process. It should be said, something has to be done. Even if we didn't shift to renewables, we'd need to renew our gas fleet of power stations. That costs money. Nuclear is an option. That we know cost, the size was going to cost £38 billion. So doing nothing isn't an option, but the course we're on is a very interesting dynamic here that consumers are feeling. A prolonged cost of living crisis has now demonstrated that this shift is not cost-free.
Yeah. Paul, thanks very much indeed.
Yeah,
and
Paul, thank you.
Worrying news for people as they turn the heating on in these very cold days.
Yeah, absolutely right. All right, let's go to Ukraine now. And President Zelensky there has said that he is ready for honest work after receiving a draft peace plan drafted by the United States and Russia.
Yeah, America and Russia have produced a 28-point strategy to end the conflict, insisting the plan does not require major concessions from Ukraine. But EU leaders responded to the proposals by insisting that Europe and Ukraine must have a seat at the table in any negotiations.
Well, overnight, President Zelensky was on social media saying that he's ready to work on that US-backed plan. Well, our Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett has this.
The talk is of peace, but he was dressed for war. On a rare visit to his troops, Vladimir Putin had a message that Russia has no intention of backing down.
We have our own tasks, our own goals. The most important of these is the unconditional achievement of the goals of the special military operation and the fulfillment of the objectives set before us.
And it's clear Russia's on the offensive at the negotiating table too. In Kyiv, American officials presented Ukraine with a new peace proposal, drawn up after holding secret talks with Moscow.
Nice to see you. You're very welcome. We are thankful to President Trump. Best regards to him. President Trump and our Vice President pass along their very best.
Warm words, but not good news for Kyiv. The proposals reportedly include the surrender of the Donbass, which Russian forces are yet to occupy the whole of, and limits on Ukraine's armed forces, both of which are major concessions for Kyiv. But the White House has defended the deal.
It's a good plan for both Russia and Ukraine, and we believe that it should be acceptable to both sides, and we're working very hard to get it done.
It's only a month since the Kremlin appeared to have fallen out with the White House. A second summit between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump was abruptly cancelled by the US president, remember, after Russia's refusal to make any concessions. And that was followed up with sanctions. But now it appears to be all change again. Moscow's apparently back in Washington's good books.
Reports of the secret talks have caused concerns in Europe and warnings that they must have a seat at the table.
Of course, for any plan to work, it needs Ukrainians and Europeans on board. So this is very clear.
There was some contact between Russia and Ukraine away from the battlefield. The two sides exchanged more bodies of dead soldiers. But when it comes to peace talks, Kyiv is being kept at arm's length. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Moscow.
Well, and just on that final thought by Ivor there, Kyiv has not been around the table for these negotiations, and it's that old adage that if you're not around the table for peace negotiations, you're on the table, and it seems as if the Russians and the US are making decisions outside of the desires, wants, needs of Ukraine. Now, President Zelensky has been on social media. He's posted on social media every single night of this invasion by Ukraine, and in his latest video, his words are interesting to try and pass. Let's have a listen. We'll talk about it off the back.
I outlined what is fundamentally important to us, and we agreed that the teams would work on these proposals to make them a reality. We will not make any rash statements and are committed to clear, honest work. Ukraine, the United States, and our friends and partners in Europe and around the world. These days there have been many conversations with European leaders and a lot of correspondence. I thank all of Ukraine's friends for their support. Today I spoke to Finnish President Stubb. We are coordinating our efforts. I am also in constant contact with other leaders, including the President of France. I expect to speak to President Trump in the coming days. We are aware that America's strength and support can bring peace closer, and we do not want to lose that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because a very measured response there from President Zelensky, despite what many people are saying are incredibly unpalatable suggestions being made in this peace plan and big concessions that Ukraine would have to make. But I guess he's very mindful of keeping Donald Trump on side because Donald Trump is very useful to Ukraine and he needs his backing.
Yeah, does not want to upset President Trump. As he said, they're going to speak in the next few days. I think he's going to be pressured into trying to accept this peace agreement. And there are loads of points in this plan, but some of the ones that are going to be most difficult for Kyiv to accept are the fact that they're going to have to give up the entirety of the Donbass, even the parts of the Donbass that Russia hasn't yet taken. They're going to be banned from ever joining NATO, of course, one of their hopes to stop from any Russian invasion in future. And on that potential future Russian invasion, part of this agreement says it's going to be written into Russian law that Russia would never invade Ukraine again in the future. Well, you can imagine what people think about that and whether that's going to be worth the paper that it's written on.
It's going to be an interesting few days and getting more reaction to that plan. In the meantime, let's return now to our top story and the energy regulator Ofgem announcing that the average annual energy bill will rise by 0.2% in January despite wholesale costs falling.
Yeah, between January and March, the typical annual dual fuel bill will be up at £1,700, £1,758 to be exact, up from £1,755. Well, this equates to an average monthly increase of around 28p.
Well, let's get the reaction of Dale Vince, who's an environmentalist and founder of Ecotricity, the UK's first renewable energy company. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much. And this price cap figure is disappointing, isn't it? Up by 0.2% from January, expected to go up even further in April as well. And there had been thought there might be a slight respite for bill payers come January. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, look, 27p a month is hardly a drama, is it? But I hear what you're saying. We want bills to go down. And currently they're about 35% higher than they were before the invasion of Ukraine, when they went to record levels. But the fundamental problem we have is that we allow gas to set the price of all of our electricity, even when we make it from the wind and sun. In 2023, that added £43 billion to our energy bills. We need to break the link in order to let green energy deliver on its real price, which is much lower than fossil fuels. And until the government does that, even if we get to 100% green on the grid by 2030, we won't bring our bills down.
Del, that's an argument that many people have been making for years now. I know not just you have been arguing for that. Why do you think at this point the people in power that have been making decisions haven't been listening to that particular plan?
I don't know. What I hear from government is that civil servants say it's too difficult. I don't understand that. We published a roadmap a couple of weeks ago. We commissioned research into exactly how to do it using the mechanisms of the energy system. It's a simple auction. And instead of getting paid what you bid as a generator, you get paid what gas bids. So it should be a very simple change to make.
And in the meantime, as we were saying, prices expected to tick higher again next year. And it's not because of higher wholesale prices, is it? It seems to be because of levies and policy decisions associated with this government investment in renewables driving up bills. Would you agree that that's what's happening?
No, because the levy component of the energy bill hasn't risen in this last quarter or this last 6 months. That's not what's happened. We have a new entrant in the kind of the levy list, if you like. There are a lot of levies on our energy bills, a lot of hidden taxes. But the new entrant is Sizewell C. It's now adding about £1 per month, which is much more than this £3 a year that we're talking about. And it's going to add that for the next 10 to 15 years while it's being built. It won't make any electricity for 10 or 15 years, but we're starting to pay for it. I think that's wrong. The other culprit...
Sorry. Sorry to interrupt you. We don't have loads of time, but we've got to invest in this sort of stuff, haven't we? I mean, I know you probably won't agree with nuclear power being the answer to all of our problems, but if we don't invest in it now, then it's not going to pay off. I mean, you know that previous governments didn't invest, and now we find ourselves where we are.
All right, I take your point, but you say that about nuclear, but you don't say that about green. What's happening? And the other culprit are the network operators that are making vast sums of money. About a third of our bills goes to the people that own the cables, then monopolies, regulated, making 40% profit margins, which is outrageous.
Are we upgrading the grid and making these new investments to try to push towards this clean energy target by 2030 too quickly, do you think? Is there a benefit in relaxing a bit about that target, relaxing the target itself, do you think? Do you think that would help keep bills down?
I don't think that it would. In the case of offshore wind, that's become more expensive. But if you look at solar, the expected price of solar in the next round of CFD contracts is about 30% below the forward wholesale price. So it's coming in at a discount. And offshore wind it may come in at wholesale or slightly above. I don't think it's fundamentally what's driving our bills up, the speed at which we're going. I mean, it's a global situation we're in terms of infrastructure costs. I don't think waiting will help us. The point you made just a minute ago is sooner we invest, the sooner we get the benefits. In nuclear, well, that's 10 or 15 years away. We can build offshore wind much faster. We can build onshore within 12 months and solar as well. So the sooner we do it, the sooner we get our bills down. But we must break the link. If we don't do that, it doesn't matter how much we build.
Absolutely. Look, Dale, you have given money to the Labour Party in the past. I do want to talk about that in a moment. But if you were in the Treasury, if you were helping Rachel Reeves craft this budget, what would you be saying to her and her team as to how energy bills can come down?
We're publishing a paper on it on Monday, and we're going to share it with every MP and share it with the government as well. 3 levers to reform the energy system. It's not fit for purpose anymore. They're fairly straightforward things to do. Break the link, CFD for the North Sea, and control the network operators. We can halve our energy bills if we do these 3 things. That's what I'd be saying.
And Kamali just referenced your support of the Labour Party. How do you think they're doing? And are you tempted at all to switch allegiance to the Greens under their new leader?
It's a slightly, that's a funny question. Excuse me
Well,
for
why
laughing.
is it so funny? Go on. You've given 3.4 million to them since Starmer's been in power. Are you happy with the way that they're running the country at the moment?
It's more than that. But look, I give money to Labour, or I gave money to Labour because I wanted them to win the election. I thought it was the most important thing we could do. Earlier on your show, somebody said the consensus had been broken, and it was broken. The Tories pulled away from green energy. I thought that was a very dangerous thing for our country. Labour have a green agenda, and of course we just had 14 years of Tory rule, which had been so bad for the country. And so it was a moral thing. I thought, I have some money, I can do this, I can help Labour win the election. That's why I did it.
OK, so you are tempted then to give money to Zach Delancey and the Greens now?
Did I say that?
Trying to read between the lines, Dale, I wonder.
You're going to have to do a better job than that. I'm not saying that at all. I was explaining why I gave money to Labour. And look, I still believe in Labour. I don't think, obviously they're not perfect. There have been stumbles. I think most of the problem is a communication issue. I think Labour have done good things and it doesn't get talked about enough, but they haven't got energy bills down and they don't appear to be listening yet on that. And also, I think we need to reform our tax system. We need a wealth tax. We need to take VAT off energy, for example, because it doesn't belong there with, millions of people in poverty struggling to afford their bills. Why do we have VAT on there as well? There are lots of things the government could do. There are lots of things the government has done. I'm still full of belief and faith that come the next election, they'll have done a lot to turn things around in our country.
OK, well, Delvin's really interesting to get your take this morning. Yeah. We really appreciate it. Thanks very much indeed. And I guess you'll be watching the budget, like we all will, to see...
Morning to you, Dale. Thanks for being with us.
...what help the Chancellor might give energy bill payers, because it has been heavily hinted at. In fact, I think she's explicitly said that she will try to help.
She said that she will be making some changes to try and bring bills down, but will it bring it down to the levels that is required? That'll be the big question. Delvin's obviously got some ideas as to what they can do to help out. All right.
Now, police have cracked a $1 billion money laundering network operating here in the UK, involving the sale of drugs and weapons to fund the Russian war effort.
Yeah, it's an enormous operation. It spans some 28 cities and towns, and with money converted into cryptocurrency to get around financial laws here.
There's been a large quantity of cash found in the car.
Yeah. £60,000.
60,000.
Well, this is just one of the 128 arrests made. You can just hear how much cash, 60 grand, the police have found on him.
Yeah, this shows the arrest of Valery Popovich. He used criminal cash to buy lorries in the UK and sold them in Ukraine before converting those profits into cryptocurrency, making millions of pounds. So let's find a little bit more about this. It's absolutely fascinating what the National Crime Agency has said this morning. Emma Birchley is here and she's been looking at some of the details. Hi there, Emma. I mean, it's the most extraordinary spider web of people involved in this. Talk us through what the NCA has been saying about it.
I mean, it really is a huge and complex enterprise. We're talking about billions of pounds. Now, you imagine there are drug dealers on the street, there are people smuggling guns, maybe immigration gangs. They're getting cash. They need to do something with that cash. And it is converted, it's collected by couriers and then converted into cryptocurrency. And what the NCA has revealed is that the network behind all of this actually bought a controlling stake of an actual bank in Kyrgyzstan, which is helping facilitate payments actually to support, for example, the Russian military war machine. It also helps criminals evade sanctions. So you can see how maybe someone spends some money on the streets on some cocaine and is just thinking about that, thinking maybe about the dealer that they're giving the money to, but actually it has links all the way to that military machine, which is, as we know, involved in that war with Ukraine.
Yeah, the NTA say that they're into this particular network, all those arrests and all that cash seized as well. But they've also got an information campaign, haven't they, out to warn people, anyone tempted to try and get involved in some of this.
I mean, crucial to this whole enterprise is the couriers. And actually, they're putting posters up in service station toilets, basically saying, it's just a matter of time. We will catch up with you. You will get a lengthy sentence. This is what Sal Melki, the Deputy Director for Economic Crime from the National Crime Agency, had to say.
This laundering network is operating in at least 28 cities and towns in the UK, and there are many other networks like them. And they provide the lifeblood that makes crime pay. So most crime is conducted on UK streets for profit. And if you can't make criminal profit, then why bother committing the crime in the first place? And you need these individuals to take that criminal profit and make it appear legitimate. So you can either cash out, settle debts, or reinvest it in more crime.
Well, we have heard actually from the Security Minister, Dan Jarvis, who says that this will not be tolerated on the streets of our country and that they're working tirelessly to detect, disrupt and prosecute anyone engaging in activity for a hostile foreign state. And the NCA saying there's plenty more to be done.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll hear more.
We will.
Thanks very much, Emma.
Thanks
really
for now.
interesting.
Thank you for that. Well, as the sales are rolling out ahead of Black Friday next week, we're going to speak to an expert on the psychology of money. How good are you with it?
I need some tips. Welcome back. Let's update you on our headlines this morning. And as temperatures plunge, the energy price cap rises despite falling wholesale energy prices. The regulator Ofgem says it'll raise the cap by 0.2% from January, meaning bills will increase and they're forecast to go up again next spring.
Now, President Volodymyr Zelensky says that he is ready for constructive, honest and swift work with the US after he received a draft peace proposal from Donald Trump that had been worked up with the Russians. According to the reports, the proposal calls for Ukraine to cede areas of the Donbass that Russia has not yet taken.
A $1 billion money laundering network is operating in 28 towns and cities across the UK. That's the stark revelation from the National Crime Agency this morning. Officials warned that Britons who buy drugs like cocaine could indirectly be impacting geopolitical events, causing suffering around the world.
Now, we often talk about the issues of spending in the run-up to Christmas, especially with the budget just around the corner. I think it's next week, Wednesday, isn't it? And Black Friday sales are the perfect chance for some to find a bargain.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's Christmas shopping time already. I don't really want to think about it.
I've started
It's
some
like a little
already.
bit stressed. And for lots of people, it is a really anxious time, isn't it? So let's talk about this. Here with us is Vicky Rennell, who's a psychotherapist and an expert in the psychology of money. And really interestingly, you're talking today about something called financial imposter syndrome. So what is that?
Well, it's a psychological pattern in which we doubt our financial management skills and we live in fear of being found out as a fraud. So people with financial imposter syndrome would typically doubt their ability. They might attribute any success that they've had to external factors. You know, it was help from friends or I was lucky. But anytime anything goes wrong with their finances, they blame themselves and their lack of skills, which can have a real impact on how they save, spend and manage their money overall.
Vicky, is this just people that don't have very much money that find it difficult to sort of deal with
No,
finances?
because it's not about how much money you have, it's about how confident you feel about it. So in this piece of research that I conducted with Quilter, they found that 23% of the people that suffer from financial imposter syndrome earn more than £80,000 a year. So actually, it isn't about the numbers.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And you'd imagine that if you didn't have much confidence in your money management, you'd be more cautious. I mean, is it an altogether bad thing?
Well, it is a bad thing when it prevents you from planning, and all money needs a plan. And no matter how much money you have, if you have a plan, you also know how much you can spend. As you say, approaching the holiday season, you might want to know how much you can afford to spend on presents and whatnot. So money needs a plan, and it doesn't matter how much of it you have or don't have. But one of the interesting things as a psychotherapist, I can tell you, a lot of people come to me and tell me that their reason for not reaching out for help to build a plan and manage their money better is because they grew up thinking that financial advice is only for rich people. And so these messages stay with us and influence what we then do as adults.
That's really interesting, isn't it? You have to have loads of money to be able to plan to have money, but your research tells us that's not the case. How do we compare in this country to other countries? I'm not sure if that's in your research, but we were just talking off air, weren't we, that when we were at school, there was sort of no budgeting advice, no financial planning, none of that.
Didn't know how a mortgage worked, didn't know
no idea how
any
any of that sort of thing works. So I think it's actually going to come in the curriculum in the future. I'm not sure when they're going to bring it in, but they have talked about it. How do Brits compare to other people?
You know, it's quite similar abroad as well. There isn't much financial education. Whatever we pick up at home, and sometimes what we pick up actually is not useful information, but it's our parents' anxieties about managing money because they themselves weren't taught it. And so it kind of perpetuates, which is why in order to build confidence when it comes to money, you have to take action maybe before you find that confidence, because action can lead to a kind of a virtuous cycle of feeling more confident, because when you begin to plan, then you start finding out that you feel more in control of your financial future rather than becoming reactive or panicking.
But the problem is, doesn't action require going to an expert, and that can cost money?
Yes, well, first of all, initial consultations tend to be free, and that's a space in which you can ask all the questions and find out how much it's going to cost, and often that's dependent on how much you have. But all money needs some form of plan, and you don't always do it with an advisor. But if you can, why not? Because sometimes they're the sounding board that you can then use in times of volatility, and we know all about that lately, or uncertainty, to ask the right questions and not overreact.
I mean, should we be careful where we're getting this advice? People will have seen on their timelines, I'm sure, lots of financial advice coming through social media, perhaps not from registered professionals who know what they're talking about. Do we need to be mindful of where some of this advice is coming from?
Yes, that's really important. And we see a lot of younger people turning to social media for advice. I think what I found most striking in this research is financial imposter syndrome affects 3.2 million people in the UK. That's a lot of people. But when you look even at the older generations who might have investments, they might have pensions or own a property, they don't see themselves as investors. But when we see ourselves as investors, we take more action and we feel more in control and we're more confident about money.
I'm glad you mentioned the P word, pension. Is that where you would start with some of this planning? Because many people, when they get their first job at 20, 21, whatever it is, the idea of paying into something that you're going to be taking out when you're 70, you just forget about it and you perhaps don't do it.
Well, the important thing is to start early, whether you start with pensions or other kinds of investments. The important thing is start early, because then you start building your confidence. And when it comes to making bigger financial decisions later down the line, then you've had that experience. You've asked the right questions. You've leaned into conversations about money rather than being avoidant. And that's what a lot of people tend to do. They keep it vague when it comes to money. They don't really engage with it because they're not confident about it.
And of course, we've got a big financial moment in the calendar, the budget coming on Wednesday, and that can be a bit overwhelming, can't it? Because it's a blizzard of statistics and policy changes, and people find it very hard to know how it's going to affect them and what steps they should take.
Yes, it triggers so much anxiety, and money is linked to our survival. So there's an evolutionary response to this because we experience any uncertainty as a threat. And so we become anxious, and that can lead to two sorts of responses. Either we freeze and we become overwhelmed, or we might even overreact and make premature choices before the information is out, which can be detrimental to our finances. So it highlights even more the need of having a plan, so that instead of going down those two routes, we actually stay somewhere in the middle and we make thoughtful choices.
Plan early was one of your main tips. Any other main tips that people should be sort of taking on this morning, do you think?
Well, don't blame your financial shortcomings to just being bad about money. Turn that into something concrete that you can work on. You can say, well, I don't understand investments. That's something you can work on. Or I want to learn how to budget. That's something you can work on. Keeping it in the vague is not helpful. So take small action, make it measurable and concrete, and that's going to help you become more confident.
Very good advice. Yeah, Vicky Reynolds, thanks so much for coming in and chatting us through it.
Morning to you. Thank you so much for that. Take some advice.
Yes, I'm going to have plan my Christmas shopping very carefully.
Have you started it?
No. I work on a theory of one for you, one for me.
Really? Yeah, that's true.
That's my planning.
I've got ahead of it slightly, but only because of circumstances. I mean, you know what I bought for someone. Shh, don't tell her.
Yes.
But yes,
we'll find out later.
We will. I tend not to get too far ahead of it. As the voices in my head just told me, it's only November.
It is.
We've got a long time to go. All right, something completely different.
Yeah, beauty contests. They're supposed to be a celebration of poise, apparently, but it all went wrong for a Miss Universe contestant in Thailand.
We're going to show you this footage here of Dr. Gabrielle, of course, that is, Henry, who had to be stretchered away after taking a fall from the catwalk. Let's play the clip and we'll have a look at it as we're talking. Dr. Henry was taking part in the Miss Universe competition, as we said, in Thailand, when unfortunately, as she was walking, that happened. Now, of course, as you can imagine, people have been sharing this clip far and wide on social media. Thankfully, Dr. Henry is safe and well, taken to hospital, of course, with a few cuts and bruises, but the show goes on and she's not too badly hurt. It's quite a tumble off the stage there.
Yeah, this is Miss Universe Jamaica 2025, and as you say, she went to hospital, but luckily not injured herself too badly, but that's a really horrible fall, isn't it?
It is a really horrible fall. It's actually a competition this year, this Miss Universe, that's had some controversy, not just people falling off stage, but judges quitting, accusations that it's all a fix. It's fascinating sort of throwback to what I thought was quite an archaic idea of having a beauty contest that they are still holding. This one has been very controversial this year. We might be talking about that a little bit more over the weekend, should time allow. But we're missing Dr. Gabrielle Henry. Miss Jamaica, of course, all the very best.
Absolutely, wish her well, yeah. Now then, it's been a long morning for cricket lovers with the Ashes getting underway in Australia at 2:30 this morning. Did you tune in?
No, I had it on my phone quickly just to have a little listen. It didn't start so well, though, did it?
Didn't start
for England
so
anyway.
well.
Australian fan.
But let's get an update from Jackie. She's back, and yeah, not a great start for England. But there was one sense in the last hour that they were pushing back a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. No, terrible start. In fact, you know, it was all about let's get a good start. Let's sort of start as we mean to go on. Let's set the tone for the whole of the Ashes series by going to Perth and getting something. And you'd thought, that's all a bit cheap. 172 all out, choosing, you know, winning the toss and choosing to bat first, and it looked like it could be a good ground to bat on, but people were out in silly ways and perhaps not used to the fact the ground was so enormous, you know, going for a four that would have been a four anywhere else, but
I think someone
didn't reach the boundary, so it was a catch.
Called the pitch the Green Monster because it's so big.
However, you're right, because they have bitten back with the ball, England.
Yeah.
They've taken 4 wickets early on, and the Australians finding it very difficult to come by runs. So at the minute, 65 for 4, and England looks so close to putting them under pressure every single time they bowl, and so close to getting another wicket.
Another couple of wickets there. They're into them, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are into them. Let's have a quick look about how all panned out this morning before we chat more about the significance. Opener Zach Crawley was the first one to be dismissed by Mitchell Starc, who had great figures, by the way. 7 for 58. Out for a duck at the end of the first over. Usman Khawaja with the catch at first slip. In fact, Mitchell Starc's best ever haul in Test matches, and certainly the best figures on day one of an Ashes series. Joe Root also went for a duck. He was caught at second slip by Marnus Labuschagne. England 39 for 3 at that point. Joe Root still waiting for that first Test century in Australia. Everyone's been talking about that too. And of course, the big one, Ben Stokes, captain, scored just 6 runs in his 12 deliveries before being bowled by Starc, who I think had just decided to take it on himself, get all the wickets in the absence of 2 of the key Australian bowlers. Some resistance from Harry Brook, who was England's highest scorer with 52 before he was dismissed. Debutant Brendan Doggett taking his first wicket. And then Jofra Archer, he was in first and right into them. He led England's fight back, dismissing Jake Weatherald on his debut, second ball, before taking the wicket of Marnus Labuschagne, which is so key, leaving Australia on 28 for 2. And then another key wicket, the captain, Steve Smith, he never got going, caught Root, bowled Bryden Carse for his first wicket of the series. Now, earlier on, we had a chat with England cricket captain Nasser Hussain, and this was after England had finished and we were waiting for Australia to start batting. And this is what he had to say about day one so far.
It's not a good start. It was an eventful start, as it often is in Ashes series down under, with Crawley going in the first over. It was all action cricket in that first session, and just after lunch it was either boundaries or wickets. England will be hugely disappointed, having won the toss and batted. It has done a little bit. It has seamed around a little bit. It is a great atmosphere at Perth. It is doing a bit. It is fantastic cricket. It really is very watchable cricket. England bowling well. It is just their batting, Jackie, and in particular their batting down the order. They knew what was coming. On these bigger grounds of Australia, the hook shot and the pull shot becomes dangerous, because in England you can top edge it for 6. Here there are men out in the deep.
I have to say, we're getting a bit of sledging in our ears from our Australian director.
He's Australian, isn't he?
Well, he was all very loud earlier. He's gone a lot quieter now.
He has gone a bit quieter. And Nasser Hussain looking pretty perky, I'd say. He's definitely enjoying the cricket.
Well, I think he knows, a man of experience, being in this position himself many times, that you can't lose the Ashes on the first day. It's day one. There's just so much more cricket to be played. I mean, you can't lose the Ashes on day one, but you could certainly lose a Test match if you stuff it up in the very first session. I mean, have England stuffed this up? Actually, 172 is not looking too bad at the minute, with Australia 4 wickets down already. But Mitchell Starc, my goodness. 7 wickets for him this morning for 58. His best ever figures. What a time to do it. No Pat Cummins, such a key figure for Australia, bowling and captain. No Josh Hazlewood, very experienced bowler, very key for them. And Mitchell Starc's just gone, I'm just going to do it all myself. I'm going to do it all myself. So, I mean, I think England will be very disappointed they didn't get more. They didn't get more from that wicket. And, there are going to be nerves on the first day, and people are going to be tight. They haven't had any practice matches against Australian opposition, and they haven't practiced on a pitch like this, I don't think. So there was a lot to get your head round on day one of an Ashes test, and it could have gone better.
Would have played for the dress rehearsal in front of everyone right on the pitch, on a new ground as well.
Let's just bat and see how it goes.
See how we get on. No. Well, we'll see. Look, as you say, day one, we're still in the first phase of it. The Australians are struggling a little bit, 65 for 4.
And the England bowlers looking really dangerous, we should say.
Definitely are. All right, Jackie, thank you for that. More from you later on this morning. Now, do stay with us here on Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. Coming up next, we're going to get the views of the opposition in the form of the Shadow Chancellor, the Duchy of Lancaster, Alex Burkhardt, asking all about plans for the government for the budget and, of course, his reaction to that report from the COVID inquiry.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Okay. Are you ready? Yep.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
She's preparing the ground to raise taxes.
The budget, I've got to do the things that I think are right.
There are tax rises coming down the track.
You can't rule out further tax rises.
It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
Goodness knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything. It's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first. Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper To find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello there and welcome back to Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. Now, before the break, we were talking about spending anxiety, and there's no doubt the budget and all the uncertainty around it is contributing to that somewhat. Well, let's get the views of the Conservative Party. We're joined by Alex Burkhart, Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Alex Burkhart, thank you very much for being with us this morning. We're not going to talk cricket. Perhaps we will have a bit of time later, but we'll talk about the politics of the day. And before we talk anything about the budget, I want to talk to you about the COVID inquiry.
Yeah.
We heard Baroness Hallett in a scathing statement yesterday talking about a government that you were a part of during that period. First of all, do you want to take the opportunity to apologise to the victims of COVID-19 for some of the mistakes that were made by the Johnson administration?
Look, I know that the inquiry that was published yesterday is going to dredge up a lot of dismal memories for a lot of people. Coming into the studio this morning and thinking about the people I know who didn't survive, and also about some of the young people whose lives were shaken up very, very dramatically by what happened. And obviously, I'm very. My heart goes out to everybody who was impacted in those ways. And I think the findings yesterday are quite complex. Mm-hmm. That you have the inquiry saying that maybe the government should have locked down earlier in March 2020. But also the inquiry says that was the scientific advice that was given to ministers in March. Mm-hmm. And the government... Boris Johnson and the ministers around him working in this incredibly difficult set of circumstances, facing a pandemic, the like of which we hadn't seen in a century, hadn't seen since 1919, Spanish influenza at the end of the First World War. And the scientific advice kept changing. And I'm not criticising the scientists in any way, mm-hmm. I'm criticising because nobody knew what this thing was. Yeah. And so this is a long-winded way of saying...
We haven't said sorry.
Well, I'm sorry to everyone for the pain that they went through. I think it's for the people who were making decisions at the time to decide what they want to say. But I am not going to criticise the people who were making decisions then, because it was... Everything becomes a bit clearer with hindsight, but they were doing something that no government had to do in a century in an environment where we didn't really know what we were dealing with. So it's all very difficult. So the first thing is that the government was acting on scientific advice. I think that the second thing I would say is that what really needs to come out of this inquiry is a better understanding of how the next government that has to face anything like this can get the best possible scientific advice at the fastest pace, and how we can make sure that the mechanisms of government can work faster and more efficiently. Yeah. Some things that the government at the time did very well. The vaccine production and rollout was just about the best in the world.
Definitely was.
The furlough payments were again considered to be absolutely world standard. But of course, no government everywhere got everything right. And we've got to make sure that we understand what's what.
Let me put another point to you then. Baroness Hallett also described the situation in Number 10. Now, you were Boris Johnson's PPS. For everyone who doesn't know, that is your principal...
Oh, no, parliamentary private secretary. It's confusing, but a parliamentary private secretary is a parliamentary aide. So I wasn't an advisor in Number 10.
Thank you.
But I did work with Boris Johnson closely in terms of liaising with members of Parliament.
Really quick on this then. She described him as toxic, chaotic and indecisive. Is that a fair description?
I don't think it is, actually. And I only saw things... I think I left London on about the 25th of March when lockdown began. I just saw a lot of people working very, very hard to do the best thing for the country in what was an extremely difficult and anxious-making environment. And just to remind people, the following month, the Prime Minister nearly died.
Yeah, he was very sick.
He was incredibly ill, and there were moments where we thought he wouldn't live. That's how tense it was.
Alex, I want to get you on this final thing. Sky News understands that the Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, is going to approve this super embassy, this Chinese super embassy. What's your response to that? Concerns about security?
Yeah, look, the Conservative Party doesn't want this to go ahead. Very concerned about security, very concerned about technical issues that have been raised by people who think that this might be used to look at information that is coming through the City of London. But we've just had a case of Chinese spies spying on members of Parliament, and that's...
Alex.
OK.
I'm sorry, we've got to stop. We've run out of time. I really apologise for running out of time, but plenty more to come next hour of the programme. Stay with us.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Hello and a very good morning. It's 9 a.m. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
As the country shivers in freezing temperatures, the energy regulator raises the price cap on bills despite falling wholesale energy prices.
Rolling out the red carpet, the Prime Minister has landed in Johannesburg in South Africa for the first ever G20 held on the continent.
President Zelensky says he will honestly engage with a peace plan drafted by the US, but warns Russia has no desire for peace.
The Beatles were always a great little band.
Well, for the billions of Beatles fans all around the world, a brand new 9-part series called Beatles Anthology 2025 is out right now.
We've heard it from everybody.
Also today, even if you haven't read one, chances are you've heard of the global phenomenon Diary of a Wimpy Kid. One of my son's favourites. Well, the author of the series, Jeff Kinney, joins us.
And England fight back with some big wickets after being bowled out 172. It's a thrilling start to the first Ashes Test in Perth.
Hello, a very good morning. Thanks for joining us here today. And we begin with some disappointing news for consumers as the energy regulator Ofgem has announced a rise in the cap on energy prices. That cap, that will now go up by 0.2%, means that bills will rise from January and are then forecast to increase again in April.
Yeah, the rise is unexpected. It had been predicted that Ofgem would cut the cap. The increase comes despite falling wholesale energy prices. Let's bring in our business and economics correspondent, Paul Kelso, for a bit more on this. Morning to you, Paul. So what is going on? We were predicting it was going to go down. It's gone up a bit.
Yeah, there was an expectation it would fall marginally. It's gone up marginally. But what's interesting is going on underneath the headline, which is a 0.2% increase. That amounts to about £2 extra on an average annual bill of more than £1,750. So negligible. In the scheme of things, if it's a bit colder or a bit warmer, that will be wiped out. But the interesting is why that bill is still rising when wholesale prices, which are set primarily by gas, we all remember the role of natural gas in pushing prices up enormously after the war in Ukraine, they've actually fallen by 4% in the last 3 months when Ofgem measures prices set this cap. So why haven't bills fallen by 4%? Well, there's a couple of new charges in these bills. One of them is £1 a month. We're all going to pay £1 a month for 10 years at least to cover the building of Sizewell C, big new nuclear power station, which will provide some base load, as it's called, on the grid. Also a social cost, as it's known. The government chooses to put some of the support it provides to less well-off households, the Warm Homes discount. We all pay for that via our bills. So that's added on as well. It doesn't explain the whole 4% difference. There's just the underlying cost of the transformation of our grid, moving to renewables, low carbon like nuclear, massive expansion of the grid required to make that work. Those costs are rising and those costs are pushing up bills. So if you like, the cost of net zero is starting to weigh on bills. I've been taking a look at this over the last a month or two, speaking to energy providers and politicians across what is now a divide over net zero. And we can have a look at a short version of that report now.
If the government has a vision of the ideal home, this is probably it.
A heat pump can keep an old house warm then?
Oh yes, no problem about that. It's only a question of how much heat you need.
Maddie and Richard have optimised their suburban Surrey house for low-carbon heat and power.
The main unit's out here, so it's taking heat out of the air and then taking the warmth in the water circuit back into the radiators.
So you've got solar as well?
Yes.
It's taken years of planning, upfront investment and subsidy, but they are saving money.
You've got double glazing.
Yes, and we've got a battery.
OK, so it sounds like you've got all the equipment. You've done everything you can. Can you put a number on total spend, solar power plus solar panels plus heat pump?
If we were doing it today, the heat pump would be about 13, the solar panels would be about 10, and the battery would be about 4. But we've done that over 20 years.
Has it saved you money?
It saves us a lot of money.
The story of this house is a microcosm of the energy transition. There may be dividends in future, but the upfront cost of the race for clean power is being paid today, leaving the UK with among the highest energy prices in the world. Built in a hurry in the 20s and 30s, connecting largely coal-fired power stations to cities, the grid expanded in the 50s as nuclear power came on stream. And in the 90s, the dash for gas started to displace coal, but connecting new solar and offshore wind requires a network of undersea cables and pylons at a cost of around £70 billion. Reducing reliance on gas-fired electricity is central to the plan, but while gas prices have fallen back, the cost of renewables and grid expansion is rising. The boss of one of Europe's biggest providers says cutting green levies is the only quick fix.
We have quite a lot of policy costs in our energy bills in the UK. If we remove those from energy bills and put them into general taxation, that will have a big dampening effect on energy prices, but fundamentally it is about gas.
Higher energy bills have helped shatter the political consensus.
Net zero was a Conservative policy. Why have you ditched it?
Net zero is now forcing people to make decisions which are making people poorer. And that's not what people signed up to. So when it comes to energy bills, we know that they're going up over the next 5 years to pay for green levies. When you look at jobs, we are losing jobs to other countries. Industry is going. And that not only is a bad thing for our country, but it also is a bad thing for climate change.
The government promised its clean power plans would cut bills by £300, but now says consumers will have to wait.
When are energy bills going to come down?
The truth is, we do have to build that infrastructure in order to remove the volatility of fossil fuels from people's bills. We obviously hope that that will happen as quickly as possible, but there's no shortcut to this, and there's no easy solution to building the clean power system that brings down bills. And our opponents talk about gas being an alternative, but of course we would have to build new gas at huge cost as well.
Chancellor Rachel Reeves has promised to cut energy costs in the budget to ease the short-term pain of delivering long-term gain.
Yeah, Paul, so interesting. And a lot of people now thinking, am I going to get any respite on these rising bills from the Chancellor come Wednesday?
Indeed, and it's a live question, and one Rachel Reeves has gone a little way to answering. She has said explicitly, I will take action to cut energy bills in the budget. So what could she do, given that some of the stuff we're talking about there, the long-term project of massively expanding renewable power and the grid, we heard the Minister there say there's no shortcut, they're sticking to that. So what can she do? Well, the area people are looking at as VAT could be cut, which is 5%. That would save about £60 a year for a household, but that would disproportionately benefit those who spend more on energy, generally those with larger houses who are better off. What seems to be a real live option is taking some of those social costs. I mentioned the warm homes discount, which is not a cost of power. It's a choice that government's made about how to support those who struggle to pay their bills. So if you shifted that into general taxation, there's some other, there's a fund that energy providers pay into, the energy providers then to allow people to insulate their homes. Again, that's our direct power price. That might be shifted. And there's a package of those kind of social or policy costs, as known, about £160 worth that could be shifted into general taxation. That cut about £160 from our bills. That would bring prices down. Of course, the challenge for the Chancellor is that anything she takes off our energy bills goes into the general taxation pot, so you've got to find it from somewhere else. But there is, I think, the measure that we heard Claire Coutinho there, the Conservatives, they came up with net zero. They've now abandoned it. Reform aggressively oppose it. There used to be a consensus, now a divide. People are feeling, bluntly put, the cost of net zero in their pockets. This is a central Labour policy, but they clearly feel they need to do something in the short term to ease the cost of what they still say is a long-term gain.
All right, Paul, for now, thank you so much for that. And as Paul's mentioned there, it is difficult for consumers to have to sort of countenance the fact that even though the wholesale price of gas has gone down, people's bills are still high and they may well go up again.
Yeah, and the government's argument is we need to make these investments because in future it will bring bills down. They've had that pledge, remember, of bringing our bills down by £300 by 2030. So they maintain they're going to stick to it. We'll see how that goes. At the moment, they're heading in the wrong direction.
Yeah. All right, to Ukraine now. And President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that he's ready for honest work with the US after he got a draft peace proposal from Donald Trump worked on with the Russians.
Yeah, America and Russia have produced this 28-point strategy to end the conflict, insisting that the plan doesn't require major concessions from Ukraine. Well, the EU has confirmed that a lunchtime bilateral between US officials and EU ambassadors will happen today in Kyiv, and a call between President Zelensky and Donald Trump is scheduled next week.
Yeah, this is moving really quickly. So overnight, President Volodymyr Zelensky was on his social media. He posts on social media every single night since Russia invaded, saying that he is ready to work on this plan.
I outlined what is fundamentally important to us, and we agreed that the teams would work on these proposals to make them a reality. We will not make any rash statements and are committed to clear, honest work. Ukraine, the United States, and our friends and partners in Europe and around the world. These days there have been many conversations with European leaders and a lot of correspondence. I thank all of Ukraine's friends for their support. Today I spoke to Finnish President Stubb. We are coordinating our efforts. I am also in constant contact with other leaders, including the President of France. I expect to speak to President Trump in the coming days. We are aware that America's strength and support can bring peace closer, and we do not want to lose that.
Yeah, well, as I said, this is moving pretty quickly now this morning. That announcement that there's going to be that meeting at lunchtime to discuss this proposal. The Europeans feel that they were cut out of the discussions prior to this. They want to make sure that their say is had in that lunchtime meeting. And President Zelensky, they're making it really clear that he is committed to trying finding a solution that brings about peace.
Yeah, and it's a very kind of temperate response, isn't it, from President Zelensky, when a lot of the analysis has been that what seems to be on the table is not in any way in Ukraine's interest, and yet he's going to tread carefully, inevitably, because he wants to keep Donald Trump on side, because Donald Trump's support, not least in terms of military surveillance and intelligence, is really vital to Ukraine, so he doesn't want to upset him.
He does not. All right.
One to watch. Let's turn our attention to Johannesburg now, because the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has just arrived for the G20 summit. We can cross there live now, because our political editor, Beth Rigby, is travelling with the Prime Minister and can talk to us. So, Beth, very good morning to you. So, Keir Starmer touching down in Johannesburg on another foreign trip. Some people saying there's an awful lot going on at home. Why are you there? Which was a question I'll put to you, especially given that Donald Trump apparently isn't going to go.
Yes, Anna. I mean, the Prime Minister is here, and in terms of your question about how much foreign travel is he doing, is that landing badly at home, this is his 45th trip since becoming Prime Minister. I can't keep up with him. He's all over the world all the time, and he has come in to criticism for that. But as he landed here at the G20 this morning, he made a point coming over to say that this is all about trying to drive jobs back home. The government today have announced £400 million worth of exports from South Africa to the UK, and I think we're going to see him out and about trying to bang that drum later today. And on the plane, when we asked him about the relevance of the G20, he talked about 200,000 jobs in the UK coming from G20 nations in the past 3 years. The G20 is basically a collection of the most industrialised nations around the world. But you are right, Donald Trump is not here, and it really is a blow for multilateralism. Donald Trump said he wasn't coming. He has not sent any US officials, and given that the US obviously is the world's biggest economy and a global leader, not having him here is controversial, to say the least. Now, the president of South Africa, Ramaphosa, he was making the point just yesterday saying that the US might still come. The White House has shut that down and made it clear no one has. And actually, the G20 is going to Florida. It's going to be hosted in the US next year. So some US official will have to come here at the closing of the G20 to formally hand over the baton, if you like. But of course it's a blow to the G20 that he's not here, not least because many a European leader and our Prime Minister, I have no doubt, would like to speak to Donald Trump and get into his ear around this proposed US-Russia peace plan for Ukraine. The Prime Minister on the plane over last night saying that it has to be a just and lasting peace for Ukraine, saying that the Ukraine has to be involved. So I think they could have done with Donald Trump here for some quiet diplomacy, but President Trump is a no-show.
Absolutely. Well, that clears that up, whether or not Donald Trump or someone from the US is going to be there. Thank you for that, Beth. And you say you've been travelling with the PM, and overnight he had some things to say about the leader of Reform UK, did he?
Yeah, he did. Look, there was a story in The Guardian in the past few days about Nigel Farage and some remarks he'd made many, many decades ago when he was at school, alleged allegations around racism and anti-Semitic remarks. Now, Nigel Farage's spokespeople have said recollections that far back may differ, and it's one person's word against another. The Guardian had collected evidence from about 20 people, I think, they spoke to. And the Prime Minister was asked about this on the plane over, and he described Nigel Farage as spineless, and he got quite animated about this, and he said it came on top of Sarah Pochin, the Reform MP, making remarks about having too many black and brown faces on television. He criticised Nigel Farage for not picking Sarah Pochin up on this, for not actually having some process of reprimand for Sarah Pochin. He said, had it been someone in my party, I would have acted immediately. He called Nigel Farage spineless and said he had to answer these allegations. And it goes back, really, to the kind of fork in the road, as the Prime Minister put it at Labour conference earlier in the year, where he said there was a choice between a Labour government or the type of Britain he says Reform would want to lead. And I hear that he's been a bit frustrated that he hasn't been able to get back into this argument with all the turmoil around Downing Street and over the budget. So he really, really did go for Nigel Farage in that question. It was interesting, Kamali, because when I asked him at conference last September how he would describe Nigel Farage, he said he was a formidable politician. Well, today, the Prime Minister's calling Nigel Farage spineless.
Really interesting stuff. All right, Beth, thank you for that. Plenty more from you and team from the G20 later on today and throughout the weekend. All right, now, I'm looking forward to this one, or at least my niece Layla is. We're going to be speaking very soon to the author of the series, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Jeff Kinney is going to be here in the studio. Layla, you're at school, but stick around.
Yeah, your niece and me, both excited.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film.
but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Hello and welcome back. Now, chances are you or your kids, or in my case, your niece, have read at least one or all of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books.
Certainly very popular in my house.
Absolutely.
The books follow Greg Heffley, a school student who documents his life and all its challenges in his diaries, and they've sold over 300 million copies in the process.
That's not too bad. I'm very pleased to say that Jeff Kinney, the author, is here with us. Jeff, morning to you.
I'm thrilled.
Congratulations on those numbers,
Thank
man.
you very much. I appreciate it.
And the new book is out.
It is, yeah. Party Pooper. It came out a few weeks ago. It's the 20th book, so it felt like a year to celebrate, so it's got a birthday theme.
Well, I want to thank you because your books got my son into reading on his own.
That's cool.
So it really did make a big difference to him. But why do you think that, I'm asking you to blow your own trumpet now, but why do you think your books appeal to so many children?
I think that when a kid opens one of my books, they see a mix of text and cartoon drawings, and they say, you know what, this looks like fun. It doesn't look like work. And I think it's so important for kids to get a book that sort of draws them in and makes them feel successful about reading, because then they'll reach for another.
Absolutely, because they feel like they're getting through it, they're turning the pages, they're making progress rather than picking something up and be like, oh, daunted by all the text.
That's right. And even as adults, of course, we feel success when we finish a book. It feels great.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's important, isn't it, that you see kids enjoying reading, because there is a decline in reading. I know that there's been a recent survey of over 100,000 children, and it found that children's enjoyment at reading was at its lowest in 20 years, which feels incredibly sad. I mean, what do you put that down to, first of all?
Well, I think we all know it's the screens, right? Because they're drawing kids' attention away from books. But we live in an attention economy, so we have to write stories that are worthy of kids' attention and pull them away from those screens.
I mean, it's an attentional economy that you're competing with. You would have seen the research this week, weren't you, that many authors are super concerned about AI taking the work that you guys are doing, and publishers feeling like it might be much cheaper to pay a bit of software to write the book. I mean, how nervous are you and your colleagues about that potential future?
I think in my field, humor, I'm not so worried about it because
it's all very funny.
Yeah, right. Every so often, I'll write a joke and I'll say, take that AI. You can't do that.
Very good.
And I feel safe for now, at least.
But yeah, but trying to get kids' enjoyment up is a challenge, as you say, when there are so many other competing interests. Is it about also trying to make reading cool somehow? And how do you do that?
I think so. I actually went to Durham yesterday, where the National Literacy Trust is actually training kids to be peer or pupil librarians. And those kids are being trained and given tools to get other kids excited in their schools about reading, and I think that's a great idea.
Give us a bit of the background as to how you got onto this particular topic. I mean, 20 books in now. What was the genesis of the idea? How did you start?
Well, I had this, I wanted to be a newspaper cartoonist, but that didn't work out for me. I wanted to be like Charles Schulz. Nobody liked my stuff, and I said, wow, I'm burning to be a cartoonist. How can I get my work published? So I came up with this idea of creating a journal where I could slip my cartoons in, and luckily it took off, and I was off to the races in 2007.
Nice.
And there are a lot of jokes.
There
in
are
your
a lot
books.
of jokes, yeah.
I think you've got a figure, haven't you? How many jokes per book?
These days I write probably about 2,000 jokes per book.
Wow. 2,000?
Many of them are terrible.
Do you try them out before you put them to give them to a publisher, or do you like?
Sometimes I'll slip one to my wife or
That's
to
funny, just
one
to
of my
see.
sons. Yeah, but I write a lot of jokes and then I winnow those down to about 300 jokes. And that's what I use for my book.
Can you give us? I mean, you said you wanted to be a cartoonist for newspapers. What about the inspiration for the style of the book? I mean, I read sort of Adrian Mole books when I was a kid, which was diary-style books. Is that you getting into that sort of world? Are you?
Yeah, I wanted to create a character who was like I was as a kid, and lots of children's literature have protagonists that are like heroic or aspirational characters, and I wasn't heroic or aspirational as a kid. I was very flawed, so I wanted to create a character where kids could see themselves, maybe laugh at their own foibles.
That's really important.
And I guess there's a message for parents as well out there, isn't there, to read to your kids? Do you think that's a an important message to send out?
Yeah, that's such a great predictor of whether or not your kids will be readers. And of course, just modeling. Like a lot of parents, if they sit down after dinner and open a book, that teaches kids maybe they should open a book as well.
Versus modelling picking up your phone after dinner. I've got a copy of the book here.
Cool.
As I say, my niece Layla is a huge fan of yours. She's read them all. I know that she's been told by my sister that this is on her Christmas list, so I'm going to get you to sign that for us if you can.
Giving away the surprise.
She's at school. What time is it? She's definitely at school by now. It's really great. I mean, and that's the point, isn't it? It's certainly drawn Layla and millions and millions of others. Are you going to keep going? What's the next stage now you've got to book 20?
Yeah, I'm looking out over the horizon now. But what I've realized is that my character is a cartoon character. And cartoon characters go on and on. Like Peanuts, Charles Schulz drew Snoopy for 50 years, and I'm only on year 18, so I've got a while to go.
Plenty of time.
I loved the Snoopy books as well, but we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah,
we are out of time, but thank you so much for coming in, Jeff Kinney.
Really appreciate
real privilege.
it. Thank you for being with us. All right, well, that's Christmas sorted, at least. All right, we're going to talk cricket next, I think, because there's been a bit of a comeback for England in the first Ashes Test in Perth.
Yeah, there were you writing them off.
I know, but they're back.
We'll hear about that in a minute.
Hello there and welcome back to Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. Let's take you through our top stories. As temperatures fall, the energy price cap has risen despite falling wholesale energy prices. The regulator Ofgem says it will raise the cap by 0.2% from January, meaning an increase in bills. They're forecast to go up again next spring.
President Zelensky says he's ready for constructive, honest and swift work with the US after receiving a draft peace plan from Donald Trump to end the war with Russia. It's understood that both leaders will speak on a call next week.
And the Prime Minister is in Johannesburg, South Africa, ahead of the G20, the first ever held on the continent. On his arrival, the Prime Minister, as you can see, got a guard of honour.
Now, it's a pretty exciting day for all those millions of Beatles fans around the world.
Maybe billions. As a brand new 9-part series called Beatles Anthology 2025 is out, marking 30 years since the original series, and it recaptures everything that made the band so great.
Yeah, along with a new edition of the book and a new box set, this series is the ultimate Beatles tribute. Take a look.
1, 2, 3, ah! I met Paul, said, do you want to join my band? And then George joined, and then Ringo joined.
The Beatles were always a great little band.
The anthology is as much of the history of the Beatles that we can get. We've heard it from everybody else, now you can hear it from us.
The thumbs up from Ringo. All right, let's bring in Stephen Bailey, who owns the Beatles store in Liverpool. Stephen, morning to you. Great to have you with us. What have you made of what you've heard so far?
Wonderful to have it out 3 years after the original came out.
Let's
a lot of new people out there.
Stephen, we're going to have to interrupt you because the sound is just not good enough. I wonder if we can let you try and reconnect, and maybe we can come back to you in a little while.
Well, I really want to hear what he thinks.
I do.
Because
I
this
do want to
is
get your opinion on it.
a fascinating release and lots of little snippets from the archives in
I'm giving it thumbs up for
Are
now.
you?
If
Is that
that's
your
of any
review?
importance. Yeah, exactly. I'll give it 2 thumbs up for now.
I hang on all your recommendations.
We'll see if we can get Stephen back up in a little bit. Let's move on to something
We'll
else.
let the technical guys
work through those remnants.
do what they do. I don't know what they do. But anyway,
They fix
I'll
it.
talk to him again in a moment. In the meantime, let's bring in Jackie, because she's been giving us a running
loves the
commentary.
Beatles.
She loves the Beatles.
Are you giving it 2 thumbs?
I don't know, I'll have to watch a bit more of it. I did have a phase of really loving the Beatles. I mean, who
everyone
doesn't love
does.
the Beatles? But I mean, I went through a real phase, but not at the time.
No one ever thought that you would.
I want to
Not at
stress
the
that.
time. Years later, we got very into them in our house, and it was just all we would play. And my sister bought all the albums.
Yeah, they have a special place in many people's families, I think, that band. They certainly do in ours. Anyway, we're not talking Beatles.
We're talking Ashes. I mean, my goodness, it's been a bit of an extraordinary first day of the Ashes. Because we came in this morning and it was like, oh no, England needed a great start and they didn't get it, 1-7-2 all out. But then suddenly they've gone at them with the ball. It's been really exciting. As Nasser Hussain says, we've seen kind of everything. And Australia's struggling as well.
They really are.
With the bat. So 118 for 6. But let's
7
talk.
down.
Oh, so they just
7 down. I'm just being told.
That's as I was
so sorry to get you in here because you're missing the action.
That's as I was talking.
lost
Right,
another
who's
wicket.
gone?
Have
OK,
a look.
Mitchell
Is it
Stark.
Mitchell Stark? Oh, you were just saying you wanted him gone.
I wanted him gone. He looked a bit like, I'm not really enjoying this, and he definitely wasn't enjoying being peppered with those balls. Anyway, let's talk you through, before we chat more about it, what actually happened this morning. So Zach Crawley, opener, was the first to go, dismissed by Stark, who had a brilliant day. He was out for a duck at the end of the first over. Usman Khawaja with the catch at first slip. Mitchell Stark, 7 for 58, his best ever figures in a test match. Joe Root also went for a duck, caught at second slip by Marnus Labuschagne. England 39 for 3 at that point. Not the best start. Then came the big wicket of captain Ben Stokes. He got just 6 in his 12 deliveries before being bowled by Stark. And there was some resistance from Harry Brook, who was England's highest scorer with 52, but then he was dismissed. Debutant Brendan Doggett taking his first wicket, he got 2. But then came the fight back, and they needed this. Jofra Archer led the fight back, dismissing Jake Weatherall's second ball before taking the wicket of Marnus Labuschagne. That left Australia on 28 for 2. It's a good start. Then came the key wicket of captain Steve Smith. We wondered if he would dig in. He didn't. He was caught by Root, bowled by Bryden Carse for his first wicket of the series.
Carson took a catch at mid-on to see off Travis Head, who was building a steady, slow but steady partnership with Cameron Green. The skipper, Ben Stokes, picking up that crucial wicket. And then Stokes picking up his second wicket of the innings. Soon after that, it was Green leaving Australia in a bit of trouble at 83 for 6. So quite a fight back from England with the ball after a disappointing 172. And there has been that wicket of Mitchell Starc, who had, before this happened, had been enjoying the most fantastic day. His best ever figures in a test match of any kind, and certainly the best figures for anybody on the first day of an Ashes series. And that was looking pretty ominous. And, you know, everybody kind of wondered how Australia would be after not having their captain, Pat Cummins, and obviously such an influential bowler for them as well, and Josh Hazlewood, such an experienced and, you know, influential bowler for Australia, and bringing in 2 debutants. You know, could England really make them pay for that? And, you know, the first session, it looked like, oh, no. they have not made the most of this opportunity. They've,
Ben Stokes would have been.
Well, you know, Ben Stokes would have been so disappointed with himself with the bat, I'd imagine, this morning, because, you know, that total 172 was not good enough, was not what it could have been. But I guess there's nerves around. The first day is always quite tense. No one knows what to expect. Very bouncy pitch, massive pitch as well. So you saw a couple of shots where players thought they'd probably hit it perfectly for a 4 or a 6, and it was a catch because the ball just wasn't reaching.
But Stokes has taken 3 wickets, I'm seeing here. So I'm not being rude by looking at my phone while Jack is talking. I'm checking the score.
Ben Stokes is really up for this.
He's in.
And he has taken 3 wickets.
And zooming out, what are most people expecting to happen? Who's expected? I mean, they're supposed to be quite closely matched, these 2 sides, aren't they?
Yeah, and also many people believe it's not the strength of the Australia of old, and actually, you know, it's very hard to go to Australia and win a Test series. They've not won since 2010-11 series, where, you know, when Strauss was the captain, and even winning in Perth, 1 win in 55 years in an Ashes Test match. It's rare. It's really hard, and there's probably loads of reasons for that. The wickets, the ball is different. The Kookaburra ball is different. The crowds, the sledging, the build-up, the tension. Just a really hard place to go, and the fact that cricket in Australia is the one sport that unites a nation. It is the #1 sport, and they're obsessed with it compared to everything else. I mean, I remember going to Melbourne to see a friend who had not seen for 10 years, and the only thing she wanted to do with me was show me the MCG.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Really? I mean,
Love to see the MCG.
That's like taking you to the Oval. You'd be like, great. We didn't even get in. We were just outside looking at the statue of Shane Warne. But like for them, it's like a mecca. Come and see the G. So it's kind of like that. And I just think for them to beat the Poms in Australia is just everything. But it's so evenly matched after day 1. You really couldn't have asked for anything more.
It's going to be so exciting. Yeah. So exciting.
Looking forward to it. It's going to be a good series. Let's hope.
Yeah, I think it will be.
All right.
Now then, stay with us. We've got lots coming up for you. We're going to dive into the findings of the COVID inquiry in a moment and speak to a woman who lost her father during the pandemic and wasn't allowed to say goodbye. That's coming up next.
She's preparing the ground to raise taxes.
The budget. I've got to do the things that I think are right.
There are tax rises coming down the track.
You can't rule out further tax rises.
It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
Goodness knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything. It's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island. The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe. Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Traveling is not just about the destination. It's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better. Thank you.
Welcome back now. The ramifications of a scathing report by those behind the COVID inquiry are being felt far and wide this morning. Rivka Gottlieb is a member of the campaign group COVID-19 Bereaved Families for Justice, and she's joining us now.
Yeah, and her story, just to tell everybody, is one shared by many. You lost your father, didn't you, Rivka? Welcome, by the way, to COVID. Perhaps we can start by you telling us exactly what happened.
Yes, he actually came down with symptoms the day before the first national lockdown. So this figure of 23,000 lives could have been saved in England if lockdown had been called a week earlier. I knew this, I felt this, and it's incredibly painful to have that confirmed. He came down with symptoms. He was stuck at home, coughing and with horrible fever and all of that, and problems with the NHS 111 service that wouldn't give him the medical attention he needed. And eventually a family friend who's a doctor coached us on what to say to get a paramedic round. And when the ambulance came, they examined him and took him straight to hospital. And about 3 days later, he was put on a ventilator and he died 2 weeks after that. It was all too late.
Sorry to make you go through this again, but
yes.
I think it's just important to understand the circumstances of that. So it was an extraordinary time for everyone.
Yes.
Just tell us, as your family, so your father was sick, but you couldn't get to see him, the ambulance wouldn't go. I mean, what was...
We couldn't get medical attention for him. He was told by the NHS 111 service to stay at home and take paracetamol. He was a 73-year-old man with very serious COVID symptoms, and we could see what was happening and how he was getting worse. At the very least, he needed oxygen, even if they couldn't save him. So that was really distressing.
And then when he was taken into hospital, you say that you weren't allowed to visit?
No.
And that's because of the restrictions around
Because of the restrictions.
And the risk of passing
Yes.
on the
Yes.
disease. So what do you make of what Baroness Hallett concluded yesterday in this section of the inquiry? It's a 10-part inquiry. This is the second part, looking at the role of politicians, those in charge. What did you make of her findings?
Well, initially extremely angry, and it's brought back the anger that I felt at the time, which was what led me to join COVID Bereaved Families for Justice. It's extremely painful. I should also say that my mother caught COVID looking after my father at the time and was also hospitalised and still has long COVID. 5.5 years later. So our family is never going to fully recover from what happened.
We've got my condolences for what's happened to you and your family. I mean, I know, and every time I have to talk about this, it must re-traumatise you with having to think it through again, and all the best to your mum. The statement was put out by the group saying that it's devastating to think of the lives that could have been saved under a different Prime Minister. Boris Johnson and that administration came for a lot of blame. Do you agree with that, that had there been different leadership in charge, the circumstances may have been different?
It may have been different. It's very difficult to know because there was clearly a chaotic, I mean, it was as described in the report, and dysfunctional.
Toxic and chaotic, didn't they?
Toxic and chaotic,
she used,
yes.
yeah.
And it was dysfunctional. It was utterly dysfunctional. There was a very narrow sort of range of people who were making decisions. They weren't listening. They weren't discussing. I mean, this is why, for me, it's really important. This is for the campaign why we've been supporting Hillsborough Law, because this will introduce a duty of candour and it will raise the standards of conduct in public office and create a different culture. And that's what we need to shift. We need to shift the culture of how these decisions are made.
Well, yes, and the government has been clear to say we will take on board the lessons of this inquiry as a whole and put into place processes that make sure that we don't experience the same kind of losses should a pandemic hit once again. Are you confident that that will happen?
I think it's too early to tell. I think they're making the right noises. I think they are listening. They have been listening to us, and we have been working quite closely with the government on the Module 1 recommendations, and they've taken on board our recommendations, which go even further than Lady Hadlett's. So I am hopeful in that respect, but I think the structures and the systems need to change to safeguard against whatever future government we may have, and we don't know of what sort of political persuasion that may be, and I think that is important because these are values-based decisions that are being made.
Rivka, I'm sorry to kind of ask you this, but I hope you'll understand the reason I'm doing it. You've talked about the people who were in charge. Is there any way, when you think about it, that you have any sympathy for some of the decisions they were making? The fact that it was such an extraordinary time, no one had any idea of what we were about to face, and they were, I guess, many of them trying to make decisions based on the best interests of people. Do you have any sense of that?
I do, and I think that some were, but I also think that some were not, and I think that some genuinely didn't care. That's my impression. And they could have done better. I know it's easy to say in hindsight, but actually when we compare our actions and our records as a country to other countries of similar population and economic size, we fared very, very badly.
Yeah, one of the worst hit countries in the first year of the pandemic.
Yes.
And do you put that down to, I mean, one thing that was highlighted by Baroness Hallett was the slowness at introducing the first lockdown. She said that week of delay cost many lives, 23,000 lives. Do you think that was the main problem at the outset and then we were struggling to catch up?
I think it started earlier because the warnings came earlier. And she talked about February being a lost month. Nothing was done, and so much could have been done. The country was woefully unprepared. I am concerned that we're still woefully unprepared because our systems have been so depleted, because of budgetary restraints, because the NHS is in such a difficult situation. So it's, yes.
Talk to us about that personality thing that you've been touching on, and I think many viewers will sort of accept that we knew the individuals that were running the country at the time, and how you think it would be different if there were, I don't know, more compassionate, less sort of hubristic people perhaps in charge?
Well, you only have to look at New Zealand and what happened there. Jacinda Ardern, yes, she's been subsequently criticised, but they didn't experience the level of loss that anyone else did. I think it is possible to lead with compassion, somebody said in the inquiry that Boris Johnson was the wrong leader at the wrong time or for the wrong crisis or something like that, and that was certainly the case.
There was also the issue of rule breaking, which again was picked out in the report and suggesting that undermined public confidence. And do you think that's right? Because certainly there had been a kind of scepticism about whether or not the public would follow all the rules of a lockdown. And in fact, the British public was very good at generally at obeying the rules and avoiding contact. Do you think that did make an impact from your experience?
Absolutely, and there is evidence that shows that public compliance started to waver after rules started to be broken. And then when the Partygate scandal started to hit, it was clear that the government couldn't be trusted, and that's a real problem. I think there are real issues around conduct. I've said this before, conduct in public office, and I think that some of the people who led at that time should not be allowed to hold public office again. It is absolutely unconscionable. They made decisions and made the same decisions over and over again. And this is something else that came out of the report. They didn't just get it wrong in the first wave, they got it wrong in subsequent waves as well.
Feeling pressure, I guess, from business and from other areas to try and open up again. And also there was this idea of fatigue, wasn't there, that people just couldn't cope with all the pressures that were going on. And that is, in the report, is kind of being challenged in many ways now.
It was based on nothing. It was an idea, but also it's a false equivalence, economy versus lives. If people's lives are affected, if people are ill, the economy is going to suffer. If people are afraid to go out because there's a virus running rampant, they're not going to go and spend their money. So it's a completely false equivalence. It all should have been thought of together.
Rivka, why don't you talk to us a little bit about your father? I'm very sorry to hear that your mum is still suffering from long COVID. And talk to us about Dad for a little bit. What was he like?
Oh, he was wonderful. I miss him every single day. He was such a kind person. He had a great sense of humour, very generous and giving, and he had a very, very strong sense of justice and was always there for sort of supporting the underdog, and that really matters to me, and that's why I do what I do. I don't want others to go through what we've been through.
Well, Rivka, we really appreciate you coming in and talking
very
about it.
proud
It
of
must
what
be
you're
very
doing.
hard for you, and you know, talking about his experience may well help people learn lessons in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank
for sharing
you.
his story.
Thanks for being with us. Good morning to you. Oh, OK, we're going to go back, actually, to Stephen in Liverpool, who runs the Beatles store up there. We lost the line to him earlier because of technical issues, but I'm pleased to say that Stephen Bailey is back with us now. Stephen, you there? Morning, we've got you.
Yes, I am.
Oh, there we go. We can hear you loud and clear now. That's better. And really good to have you on. And apologies that it took 2 tries to get you up and running. But we want to talk about this brand new 9-part series called Beatles Anthology 2025. This is Anthology 4, as I understand it. So talk us through what's on offer here for people.
It's a lovely collection of fantastic songs that you're hearing for the first time. It's going to be great for anyone who wasn't born 30 years ago because, you know, it's presenting a bunch of songs that they're just hearing. And, you know, I can remember watching it the first time and seeing a song Andrew Bird can sing and them laughing all the way through it and just going, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. For those who haven't had the pleasure of listening to some of the anthology or this one, Stephen, talk to us about it, because what you hear in these records is you hear the band joking around in studio, don't you? You hear the producer getting them ready. It's a real insight into their process.
Yeah, to be honest, that's some of the nicest part of it, hearing the little chats before, you know, they go into a take of a song or the little bits after the take of the song. These are some of the most fun parts of listening to the anthology, yes.
Yeah, and you get that sense they were just having a great time, don't you? And also their sense of creativity, but generally just a great sense of fun.
It seems to be, yes, they had a wonderful time in the studio. They loved doing what they were doing. It's just fun to hear. It's fun to hear happy Beatles.
Yeah, absolutely. Considering how things went towards the end of the band's life. Stephen, talk to us about this new generation perhaps coming to it. You talked about those who weren't around 30 years ago who weren't able to hear it. I mean, I guess producers, people who love music will be listening to this and taking cues from it, because some of the music, some of the stuff that they've re-released is really lovely to hear again in their sort of reinterpretations of songs that we know.
Yeah, let's face it, the Beatles just changed popular music. They changed everyone's idea of what popular music could be, and they are still in many ways doing that with, you know, the anthology and other releases that they've had, you know, over the past couple of years.
Well, fantastic stuff. I'm looking forward to having a good look when we come off air. Stephen Bailey, owner of the Beatles store in Liverpool, we really appreciate your take on it. Thanks very much indeed. And I have to say, Stephen's absolutely right. I think all that banter is just great. They were just funny guys.
They were having a lot of fun, especially in those early songs. You could hear them having fun. I mean, whether or not that fun stays all the way through those later albums, well, we know it didn't really. I know they started falling out a little bit, but still that creativity. I think, actually, I'm being told by the voices in my head, love those guys, we can hear some of the music of the Beatles. Let's have a listen.
Yeah. Fantastic.
If you know, you know. That's Real Love was released after Freezer Bird.
A bit worried about that piano, though.
Flying through the sky.
Flying through
how
the
you
air.
play that one.
That's not right.
No, it's not. All right. Look, let's recap where we are with the cricket, because I've got my phone in my hand again. I just locked the screen. That's not very useful.
He's been updating himself.
I have been checking it constantly. So England finished on 172, as we've been telling you. It's now 123 for 9 at the end of day one. So it is exactly. It is very, very finely balanced at the end of the first day after what looked like an England batting collapse in their innings. The Australians were put into bat and England got straight into them, which will make England fans very happy. The Australians will be devastated now because they had a real opportunity to try and put this first test to bed, but the challenge is there, and that just reinforces for me again. I know you're a massive fan of Test cricket, but how good Test cricket is. We've got another few days of this now, so let's enjoy it. It's on Sky Sports Cricket, of course, so you can watch it. All right.
Set your alarm again for the morning. Catch it then. Stay with us. All the top stories up next.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, DC.